Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab. Now, let's begin. Vincent Kern had survived 3 tours in Afghanistan, countless firefights, and 18 months of the most brutal desert warfare the Corps could throw at him. He'd earned his stripes as a Marine Staff Sergeant through blood, sweat, and an ironclad sense of duty. But nothing in those years of combat had prepared him for the 15-hour flight from Kandahar to Atlanta, cramped in a military transport with his gear and a Christmas present for his 5-year-old daughter, Emma, tucked carefully in his rucksack. He'd requested emergency leave 2 weeks early, citing family reasons that his CO didn't question. The truth was simpler. Vincent missed his little girl with an ache that no amount of video calls could cure. Emma had his eyes sharp gray, observant, and her mother's blonde hair. She was bright, curious, always asking why the sky was blue or how airplanes stayed up. Vincent had promised her he'd be home for Christmas, and he intended to keep that promise. The house in suburban Augusta looked the same as he'd left it 14 months ago. White siding, black shutters, a swing set in the backyard that he'd built himself before his last deployment. His truck was still in the driveway where he'd left it with his brother-in-law, Todd Harden, who'd been keeping it maintained. Vincent had texted Brittany from the airport, saying he'd be late, wanting to surprise them. It was 4 in the afternoon on December 23rd, and the neighborhood was quiet. Most people at work or last-minute shopping. He grabbed his duffel, and the wrapped present a stuffed unicorn Emma had been begging for, and headed for the front door. His keys still worked. The house was warm. The Christmas tree lit up in the living room, presents already stacked beneath it. Everything seemed normal until he heard it. A child's scream. Emma's scream. Vincent's training kicked in before conscious thought. He dropped the duffel, hand instinctively going to where his sidearm would be, except he wasn't armed, not here, not home. The scream came again, muffled, from the back of the house. The basement. He moved fast, boots silent on the carpet, adrenaline sharpening every sense. The basement door was open. Voices drifted up, Brittany's laugh, high and cruel. A woman's voice, older, saying, "Hold her still, she needs to learn." More laughter. Vincent descended the stairs 3 at a time. The scene that greeted him would haunt him forever. Emma was on the floor, pinned down by 9 adults. 9 members of Brittany's family, people he'd had Thanksgiving dinners with, people he'd trusted with his daughter. Marcia Cole, Brittany's mother, knelt over Emma with a pair of kitchen scissors, blood on the blades. Emma's mouth was forced open, her tongue extended, already cut and bleeding. The little girl's eyes were wide with terror and pain, tears streaming down her face. Brittany stood against the wall, phone up, filming. She was laughing. "That's what you get for talking back to Grandma," Marcia said, adjusting her grip on the scissors. "Now hold still. We're not done. Get the fuck away from my daughter." Vincent's roar cut through the basement like a thunderclap. 9 heads snapped toward him. For a frozen moment, nobody moved. Then Marcia's face twisted. "Vincent? You're not supposed to be." He crossed the basement in 4 strides, grabbed Marcia by her collar, and threw her backward into the wall with enough force to crack the drywall. The scissors clattered to the floor. The other family members scrambled back, releasing Emma, who immediately curled into a ball, sobbing and choking on her own blood. Vincent scooped his daughter up with one arm, shielding her against his chest. With his free hand, he pointed at each person in the room, his voice dropping to a lethal calm that made several of them flinch. "Nobody moves. Nobody says a fucking word." Brittany stepped forward, phone still recording, her expression more annoyed than afraid. "Vincent, you don't understand. Shut up." He'd never spoken to her like that before. Never needed to. But right now, looking at her, at all of them, he didn't recognize these people, didn't recognize his wife. "Emma, baby, hold on. Daddy's got you." Emma's small hands clutched at his tactical jacket, still dusty from Afghanistan. She couldn't speak, could only make horrible wet sounds as blood filled her mouth. Vincent carried her up the stairs, away from those monsters, grabbing his phone from his pocket with his free hand. "Vincent, wait." That was Todd Harden, Brittany's younger brother, following him up. "Let's just talk about this." Vincent spun, and whatever Todd saw in his eyes made the man stop cold on the stairs. "You held down my daughter while your mother cut her tongue out. I will deal with you. But first, I'm getting Emma to a hospital." He was halfway to the front door when his training overrode his panic. Stop. Think. These people had just committed felony child abuse. If he left them unsupervised, they'd destroy evidence, coordinate stories, maybe even run. And Brittany had it all on video, but would she delete it? Vincent's mind raced through scenarios with the cold precision that had kept him alive in combat. The local police would take hours to respond properly. These people had money. Marcia's late husband had left her well off, and the Cole family had connections in Augusta. Lawyers would be called before the patrol cars even arrived. Emma needed medical attention immediately. But Vincent needed to secure this situation first. It would take 3 minutes. 3 minutes to ensure these bastards couldn't escape justice. He carried Emma to his truck, buckled her into the passenger seat, with his jacket wrapped around her for warmth and comfort, and locked the door. Emma, baby, look at me. Her terrified eyes met his. I'm right here. Count to 100, like we practiced. Daddy will be right back. He grabbed his gear bag from where he dropped it. Inside was everything he'd been issued for his deployment. Tactical equipment, zip ties, a handheld radio, and his service weapon, which he wasn't supposed to bring home but had packed anyway, along with his phone's external battery and tactical headlamp. Vincent moved back into the house. The family had clustered in the living room, voices rising in argument. He counted 9. Marcia Cole, Brittany, Todd Harden, Brittany's sister Renee Knox, and her husband Barry Knox, 2 of Marcia's sisters Laurie Emery and Gloria Holman, and Gloria's adult sons Randy and Lon Holman. All of them had been in that basement. Everyone outside, Vincent said quietly. Now, Marcia drew herself up, trying to regain authority. Now you listen here. Vincent pulled out his service pistol. He didn't aim it at anyone, just held it at his side. But the message was clear. Outside, back patio. Now, they went. The back patio was enclosed, a sunroom addition with large windows and only one door leading back inside. Vincent herded them all in, then stepped out and locked the door from the outside. The lock was a simple deadbolt, key operated from both sides. Vincent had both keys. Then, he went to work. He moved through the house methodically, locking every door and window from the outside where possible, using zip ties to secure what couldn't be locked. The front door, the side door, from the garage, the basement windows. The family had started pounding on the sunroom door, shouting, but Vincent ignored them. This was a tactical situation now, and he was in control. 9 minutes after discovering the abuse, Vincent had secured the scene. The family was contained in the sunroom with no way out. The house was locked down. Emma was safe in his truck, and now he could think. He sat on the front steps, hands shaking with adrenaline and rage, and called 911. Then, he called his JAG lawyer from base. Then he called his brother, Daryl Kern, who lived 2 hours away in Columbia. Finally, he went to Emma, scooped her out of the truck, and held her as she sobbed into his chest, her mouth still bleeding, waiting for the ambulance he could already hear approaching. Behind him, through the windows, he could see 9 people screaming and pounding on the glass. Brittany had her phone out, probably calling her lawyer. Marcia was red-faced with fury. The others looked scared now, finally understanding they'd crossed a line. Vincent didn't look at them. He looked at his daughter, at her pain, at her fear, and made a promise that not even God himself could make him break. They would all pay for what they'd done, every single one of them. The law would have its turn first. But if the law failed Emma, if lawyers and money and connections let these monsters walk free, then Vincent Kern would show them exactly what a decorated Marine with nothing left to lose could do. The ambulance pulled up, and Vincent carried his daughter toward it, never once looking back at the house. But in his mind, he was already planning, already calculating, already preparing for war. This time, the enemy was family, and Vincent fought to win. The emergency room at Augusta University Medical Center moved with controlled chaos. Vincent sat beside Emma's bed in the pediatric unit, watching nurses and doctors work while a victim advocate spoke quietly in the corner with 2 police officers. Emma had been sedated after they'd stabilized her tongue. The cuts weren't as deep as Vincent had feared, missing major blood vessels. But the trauma was severe. Partial laceration of the anterior tongue. The doctor, a stern woman named Dr. Janet Gill, had explained. She'll need microsurgery to repair the damage. We're bringing in a specialist. She'll likely have scarring and some speech impediment, but with therapy." She trailed off, shaking her head. 23 years in pediatrics. Never seen anything like this. Now, Vincent waited, Emma sleeping fitfully beside him, while the hospital's mandatory reporting protocols kicked in. A detective named Ken Beck arrived around 8 p.m., a grizzled veteran with sharp eyes who'd clearly seen his share of ugliness. "Staff Sergeant Kern?" Beck pulled up a chair. "I need your statement." Vincent told him everything. The detective's expression grew harder with each detail. When Vincent mentioned the 9 adults holding Emma down, Beck's jaw actually clenched. "And you secured the suspects on scene?" "I contained them in the sunroom. Locked them in. Called 911, came straight here with my daughter." Beck almost smiled. "Well, that's a first. How long were they locked in?" "About 40 minutes before the patrol units arrived, according to my brother. He got to the house around the same time as the first responders." "Your brother Daryl?" Beck consulted his notes. He gave a preliminary statement. Says, when he arrived, the suspects were still contained, and he assisted the responding officers in processing the scene. Beck leaned back. "I'll be honest with you, Sergeant. In my 30 years, I've never had a child abuse case handed to me this clean. The suspects contained multiple witnesses, physical evidence, and," he paused. "Your wife was recording it?" "On her phone. I didn't see her delete it before I secured her with the others. We recovered the phone. She tried to delete the video, but our tech guys can pull it back." Beck studied Vincent. "That video is going to make this case. 9 adults participating in or observing the torture of a 5-year-old. That's aggravated child abuse for all of them. Maybe attempted mayhem charges. Georgia law doesn't look kindly on this." Vincent said nothing. His hand rested on Emma's small arm, careful of the IV line. Beck continued, "All 9 are in custody. We arrested them on scene. They're being processed now. The DA will have to decide on charges, but I can tell you this is going to be big. Media's already sniffing around." "I don't care about media." "You will." Beck's voice was sympathetic. "Your wife's family has money. They're already lawyering up. Marcia Cole hired Winston Marsh within an hour of arrest. That's the best defense attorney in 3 counties. Vincent met the detective's eyes. "I don't care how good their lawyers are. I want them in prison." "So do I, son. But I need you to understand these cases are complicated. Defense will argue it was discipline that got out of hand, that your mother-in-law has a history of strict parenting, that cultural differences. She cut my daughter's tongue with scissors. I know, and we have it on video. But juries." Beck sighed. "Look, I'm on your side. I want to see every one of these people behind bars. But you need to prepare yourself for a fight. A long one." After Beck left, Vincent sat in the quiet hospital room and thought about what the detective had said. A long fight. Lawyers. Juries. Maybe some of them would walk. Maybe all of them would walk, depending on how good those lawyers were and how they played the system. He thought about his Marine training. In combat, you had rules of engagement, but you also had mission objectives. The mission was always clear. Neutralize the enemy. Protect your unit. Complete the objective. No matter what it took. His mission now was just as clear. Protect Emma and make sure the people who hurt her face consequences. Real consequences, not whatever watered-down justice the system might offer. The door opened, and Daryl walked in. Vincent's younger brother was a high school teacher in Columbia, built leaner than Vincent, but with the same gray eyes and the same stubborn jaw their father had passed down. Daryl took one look at Emma's bandaged mouth and had to turn away for a moment. "Christ, Vince, thanks for coming. Are you kidding?" "When you called," Daryl pulled up a chair. "I've been at the house with the police. They processed everything. Took the scissors, photographed the basement, took statements from the neighbors." "Vince, this is going to blow up," Beck said. "It's already on the news. Local stations are calling it holiday horror and talking about family torture." Daryl ran his hand through his hair. "Brittany's family is circling the wagons. I overheard one of the lawyers on the phone. They're planning to argue that Emma was being disciplined for increasingly violent behavior, that she'd been hurting other kids at daycare, and this was a last resort." Vincent's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Emma has never hurt anyone in her life. I know that. You know that. But they're building a narrative." Daryl leaned forward. "Vince, I need you to listen to me. Whatever you're thinking, don't. Let the system work. The system. Vincent looked at his brother. You really think the system is going to deliver justice here? I think the system is the only way you don't end up in prison yourself. You're a Marine, you know about the chain of command, about following protocol. Protocol. Vincent's laugh was bitter. I followed protocol my whole life, Daryl. I followed orders, did my duty, left my family for months at a time to serve my country. And while I was gone, my wife helped her family torture my daughter. Protocol didn't protect Emma. Daryl was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? Whatever I have to. That's what I'm afraid of. Daryl glanced at the door, then back to his brother. Look, I get it. I do. If someone hurt my kid, he stopped. Daryl didn't have kids yet, was engaged but still planning the wedding. I can't imagine what you're feeling. But Vince, you're smart. You're tactical. Don't throw your life away on revenge. It's not revenge, Vincent said quietly. It's justice. The courts. The courts take time, and time means Emma watches these people walk around free, maybe make bail, maybe intimidate witnesses. Time means she sees them on the news with their lawyers, talking about discipline and parenting rights. Vincent looked at his sleeping daughter. I won't let that happen. Daryl studied his brother for a long moment. You're planning something. Vincent didn't answer. Vince, please, think about Emma. She needs her father. She can't have you if you're in prison. She won't have me if I'm deployed, either. My CO called while you were gone. I've got emergency leave for 3 weeks. But after that, I'm supposed to return to active duty. 3 weeks, Daryl. That's all I have. So use those 3 weeks to be with her. Help her recover. Let the DA build the case. I'll be with her every second I can. Vincent met his brother's eyes. But I'll also make sure that when I do have to leave, when I do have to go back, Emma is safe. Truly safe. Not protected by restraining orders or bail conditions. Safe because the people who hurt her can't hurt her anymore. Daryl closed his eyes. You're scaring me. Good. Because I'm fucking terrified. Vincent's voice cracked slightly. I'm terrified that I'll fail her again. That I'll trust the system and it'll let her down. That these people will walk free and I'll be halfway around the world when they... He stopped, composed himself. I can't let that happen. Then fight it the right way. Testify. Make sure they're convicted. But don't. Daryl struggled for words. Don't become something you're not. I'm a Marine, Vincent said simply. I protect the innocent and eliminate threats. That's exactly what I am. The brothers sat in silence for a while, watching Emma sleep. Finally, Daryl stood. I'm going to get coffee. Want anything? No, thanks. After Daryl left, Vincent pulled out his phone. He had calls to make, people to contact. His JAG lawyer had already sent over preliminary information about the civilian legal process. The DA's office would meet with him tomorrow to discuss the case. But Vincent was also thinking about other things. The layout of the Cole family home, where Marcia lived alone since her husband's death. The schedules of the other suspects, where they worked, their routines. He thought about bail hearings, about how good lawyers could get people released pending trial. And he thought about what he'd learned in the Marines. Not just combat tactics, but intelligence gathering, surveillance. How to watch someone without being seen. How to gather information, find weaknesses, exploit opportunities. Vincent Kern had been planning missions for over a decade. Complex operations in hostile territory against determined enemies. This wouldn't be much different. The stakes were higher: his daughter's safety, her future, her ability to ever feel safe again. But the principles were the same. Identify the targets. Gather intelligence. Plan the operation. Execute with precision. Adapt as needed. And most importantly, complete the mission, no matter what. Emma stirred in her sleep, making a small sound of pain. Vincent held her hand gently, careful not to disturb the IV. I've got you, sweetheart, he whispered. Daddy's got you. And I promise they'll never hurt you again. It was a promise he intended to keep. Through the courts if possible, through other means if necessary. 3 weeks. He had 3 weeks to make sure Emma would be safe when he had to leave. 3 weeks to wage war on the people who'd hurt his daughter. And Vincent Kern had won every war he'd ever fought. The arraignment hearing happened fast 48 hours after the arrests. All 9 suspects stood before Judge Thomas Graves in Richmond County Superior Court. Vincent sat in the gallery with Daryl and his JAG lawyer, Captain Stan Murray, watching as the defense attorneys argued for bail. Your Honor. Winston Marsh stood before the bench, every inch the successful defense attorney in his expensive suit. My client, Mrs. Marcia Cole, is a 62-year-old grandmother with no prior criminal record. She's a respected member of the community, active in her church, and poses no flight risk. House arrest with an ankle monitor would be more than sufficient. Mr. Marsh, Judge Graves interrupted. Your client is accused of aggravated child abuse involving torture of a 5-year-old. The state has video evidence. Taken out of context, Your Honor, Mrs. Cole was attempting to discipline her granddaughter who had been exhibiting increasingly violent and disturbing behavior. The method was excessive, certainly, but the intent was not malicious. Vincent's hands clenched into fists. Captain Murray put a hand on his arm. Easy, the lawyer murmured. District Attorney Mark Norton stood to respond. Norton was younger than Vincent expected, maybe 40, but he had a reputation as a bulldog prosecutor. Your Honor, the state objects strenuously to any bail. We have 9 co-defendants who participated in or facilitated the systematic torture of a child. The video evidence shows them laughing while the victim screamed. This wasn't discipline, it was sadism. Release them, and we risk witness intimidation, evidence tampering, and potential flight. Judge Graves reviewed the documents before him, then looked up at the defendants. All 9 stood in orange jumpsuits, shackled at the wrists and ankles. Marcia Cole looked defiant. Brittany looked pale, her eyes darting to Vincent in the gallery before looking away. Todd Harden kept his head down. Bail is set at $500,000 each, Graves finally announced. Cash or bond. House arrest with GPS monitoring. No contact with the victim or any witnesses. Surrender of passports. If any defendant violates these conditions, bail will be revoked immediately. He banged his gavel. Next case. Vincent stood abruptly, ignoring Captain Murray's protest, and walked out of the courtroom. By the time Daryl caught up with him in the hallway, Vincent had his phone out, already making calls. Vince, wait. $500,000 each. The Cole family can cover that easily. Vincent's voice was tight with controlled fury. Marcia alone has $3 million in assets. They'll be out by tonight, with house arrest and GPS, which means they're still free. Still out there. Vincent paced the courthouse hallway. Emma's being released from the hospital tomorrow. You know what the doctor said, she'll need months of therapy, both physical and psychological. And these people will be less than 5 miles away. Daryl grabbed his brother's arm. The restraining orders are pieces of paper. Vincent turned on his brother, and Daryl actually stepped back from the intensity in his eyes. You know what happens in domestic violence cases, in child abuse cases? Restraining orders get violated all the time. And by the time the police respond, it's too late. So what's your plan? Daryl kept his voice low. Because whatever you're thinking, I'm thinking I need to know exactly where these people are, what they're doing, and who they're talking to. Vincent's mind was already working through the logistics. The GPS monitors will tell me their locations. Public records will tell me their assets, their properties, their vehicles. Social media will tell me their associates. That's surveillance. That's preparation. Vincent met his brother's eyes. I'm not going to hurt anyone, Daryl. Not unless I have to. But I need to be ready. Ready for what? Vincent didn't answer. His phone buzzed a text from DA Norton asking to meet. I have to go. Can you pick up Emma from the hospital tomorrow? I'll meet you there by noon. Vince. But Vincent was already walking away, mind churning through scenarios and contingencies. The arraignment had confirmed his worst fears. The system was going to let these people out, and once they were out, anything could happen. The meeting with DA Norton took place in his office, a cramped space filled with case files and legal books. Norton poured 2 coffees and gestured Vincent to sit. That was quite a scene today. Norton said, Winston Marsh is a shark, but Judge Graves could have set bail much lower given the defendant's lack of priors. $500,000 sends a message. It's not enough. I know you think that. Norton leaned back in his chair. But it's the system we have. Now, let's talk about the case. I'm charging all 9 defendants with aggravated child abuse under Georgia Code 16570. It carries 5 to 20 years per count. With the video evidence and Emma's injuries, we have a strong case. How strong? Norton hesitated. 90% conviction rate if we go to trial. But here's the thing: Marsh is going to push for a plea deal. He'll want his clients to plead to lesser charges in exchange for reduced sentences. And given the costs of a trial, the risk of appeals, and the trauma of putting Emma on the stand, no deals. Vincent's voice was flat. They all go to trial. They all get maximum sentences. It doesn't work that way. Make it work. Vincent leaned forward. I've been in combat, Mr. Norton. I've seen what happens when you compromise with the enemy. When you show mercy to people who don't deserve it, they use it against you. These people tortured my daughter. They laughed while they did it. And now you want me to agree to let them plead down to something lesser so they can be out in 5 years? Norton was quiet for a moment. I understand your anger, but as a prosecutor, I have to think about what's best for the case. What gives us the highest probability of convictions that stick on appeal? And sometimes that means accepting deals. Then let me ask you something. Vincent's voice was eerily calm. If it was your daughter, would you accept a deal? Norton looked away. That's not fair. Justice isn't supposed to be fair. It's supposed to be right. Vincent stood. Prosecute them to the fullest extent. No deals. If you won't, I'll find a prosecutor who will. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Vincent moved to the door, then turned back. I have 3 weeks of emergency leave before I have to return to active duty. 3 weeks to make sure my daughter is safe, and these people face consequences. I prefer those consequences to be legal ones. But if the law fails, Emma, he let the sentence hang. Well, I'm sure you understand. After leaving the DA's office, Vincent drove to a storage facility on the outskirts of Augusta. He rented a unit under his name, paying 6 months in advance in cash. Then, he began moving equipment from his truck into the unit. His service weapon and ammunition went in first, secured in a gun safe. Then his tactical gear, body armor, night vision goggles, zip ties, communication equipment, maps of Augusta and the surrounding counties, a laptop with encryption software, a drone he'd purchased online before leaving Afghanistan, still in its box. Vincent wasn't planning violence. Not yet, but he was planning for every contingency. If the Cole family violated their restraining orders, if they tried to intimidate witnesses, if they came anywhere near Emma, or if the courts failed, if expensive lawyers and legal maneuvering and sympathetic juries let them walk, then Vincent would be ready. He spent the afternoon researching the Cole family. Marsh's house was a large property in the Somerville area, old money elegance with a long driveway and privacy hedges. Brittany, he still couldn't think of her as his wife anymore, was staying there, having posted bail within hours of the arraignment. Todd Harden lived in a rental duplex near downtown. The Knox couple owned a small home in a working-class neighborhood. The Holman family were scattered across 2 addresses. Vincent plotted all 9 locations on a map. 5 miles at the closest point, 8 miles at the furthest. The GPS monitoring meant they had to stay within Richmond County except for approved travel. The restraining orders meant they couldn't come within 500 feet of Emma or Vincent. It was something, but it wasn't enough. That evening, Vincent returned to the hospital to find Emma awake, sitting up in bed with Daryl. She couldn't talk yet, her mouth was too swollen, the stitches too fresh, but she reached for Vincent the moment he walked in, and he scooped her up carefully, holding her against his chest. Hey, sweetheart, Daddy's here. Emma clung to him, making small whimpering sounds. The victim advocate, a gentle woman named Shelley Lewis, had been working with her on processing the trauma. She's doing remarkably well, Shelley told Vincent quietly. Children are resilient, but she'll need ongoing therapy, and she may have nightmares for a while. She'll get whatever she needs, Vincent said. Money's not an issue. Actually, money was an issue. His Marine salary was decent but not generous, and while TRICARE would cover Emma's medical expenses, therapy, and the other costs of recovery would add up. Brittany had been a stay-at-home mom by her choice, not Vincent's, which meant she hadn't contributed income. The family had lived off Vincent's salary and deployments bonuses. Now Vincent would need to support Emma alone, cover legal costs, and probably hire private security until the trial was over. His savings would be gone in months, but that was a problem for later. Right now, Emma needed him. He sat with her until she fell asleep, then stepped into the hallway where Daryl waited. I've been thinking, Daryl said, about what you said earlier. About being ready. Yeah, I can help. Daryl kept his voice low. I can't be part of anything illegal. I've got my teaching license, my whole career. But surveillance? Monitoring public records? Keeping tabs on these people legally? That, I can do. Vincent studied his brother. You sure? She's my niece. And what they did to her? Daryl's jaw tightened. Yeah, I'm sure. Just promise me you won't do anything stupid. Vincent almost smiled. I promise I'll do everything smart. That's not the same thing. No, Vincent agreed. It's not. Emma came home on Christmas Eve. Vincent had spent the previous day transforming the house, removing anything that might remind her of what happened. The basement door was locked and sealed. Brittany's belongings were boxed up and moved to the garage. New locks were installed on every door and window. Vincent had even replaced the kitchen scissors with safety scissors and hidden them in a locked drawer. Daryl helped him set up a security system, cameras on every entrance, motion sensors, a panic button by Emma's bed that would immediately call 911. It was probably overkill, but Vincent didn't care. His daughter needed to feel safe. They made Christmas as normal as possible. Emma still couldn't talk, could only eat soft foods and liquids, but she smiled when she saw the presents under the tree. Vincent gave her the stuffed unicorn he'd brought from Afghanistan, and she hugged it tight, tears streaming down her face. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep in her bed, Vincent had moved a cot into her room so he could be there if she woke up. Daryl sat with Vincent in the living room. I did some digging, Daryl said quietly. The Cole family's finances. Marcia has $3.2 million in assets, mostly from her late husband's life insurance and investments. She owns her house outright, plus 2 rental properties. Brittany has nothing in her name, everything was joint with you, which means you could freeze those accounts if you file for divorce. Already did. Filed this morning. Vincent had met with a divorce attorney, a sharp woman named Joanna Pacheco, who'd laid out his options. Brittany gets nothing. Not after what she did. Good. Daryl pulled out his laptop. Now, about the others. Todd Harden works as an electrician for a local contractor. Barry Knox is in construction. Randy Holman has a DUI on his record from 2 years ago. Laurie Emery and Gloria Holman don't work, they live off their late parents' estate, which Marcia controls as executor. So, Marcia's the money behind all of them. Essentially, she's paying their legal fees. Winston Marsh doesn't come cheap. He's probably charging $50,000 per defendant. That's $450,000 for all 9. Plus bail bonds, which she secured with her properties. Daryl looked up. If you want to hurt these people, hit Marcia's finances. Without her money, their defense falls apart. Vincent considered this. How would I do that? Well, legally, you could file a civil suit for damages. Medical costs, Emma's therapy, pain, and suffering. With what they did, a jury would award millions. You could put liens on Marcia's properties, freeze her accounts pending the outcome. And illegally? Daryl hesitated. I didn't say that. But you thought it. Vincent met his brother's eyes. Tell me. Marcia's rental properties are her main source of income. If something happened to them, fire damage, code violations, anything that forced her to spend money on repairs or made them uninhabitable, her cash flow would dry up fast. Her investments are mostly in a trust managed by a financial advisor in Atlanta. If someone accessed that trust, moved the money around, even temporarily, it would take months to untangle. And without liquid assets, she can't pay her lawyers, or her bail bonds, or anything else. Daryl closed his laptop. But that would be illegal. Wire fraud, arson if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, and a dozen other charges. Vincent was quiet for a long time. What if someone else did it? Someone with no connection to me? Who? You can't just hire a Daryl stopped. Vince? No. There are people who do this kind of work. Private investigators who aren't too particular about methods. Hackers. Corporate espionage specialists. I served with guys who went into that field after they left the military. Vincent wasn't sure if he was serious or just exploring options, but the more he thought about it, the more sense it made. Legal pressure from the front, illegal pressure from the back. Squeeze them from both sides until they break. And if you get caught, I won't. Vincent's voice carried the absolute certainty of someone who'd planned hundreds of missions. Because I won't be the one doing it. I'll be here, with Emma, visible and accounted for. My brother, the teacher, will be with me. We'll have alibis. And whoever I hire will be professional enough not to leave a trail. Daryl rubbed his face. I can't believe we're having this conversation. Neither can I. But here we are. Vincent stood, paced to the window. Outside, the neighborhood was dark and quiet. Christmas lights twinkling on houses where families were safe and whole. These people hurt my daughter, Daryl. They tortured her, and the system is going to let them out on bail. Let them hire expensive lawyers. Let them drag this out for months or years. Meanwhile, Emma has to live with what they did. She has to see them on the news, has to know they're out there. I know. So yes, I'm considering illegal options. Because legal options aren't enough. Vincent turned back to his brother. But I'm not stupid. I won't do anything that can be traced back to me or that puts Emma at risk. I'll be smart about it. Daryl was quiet for a long moment. If you're serious about this, I know someone. From college. He went into cybersecurity after graduation, but he was always more interested in the hacking side than the protection side. Last I heard, he was doing freelance work. Not exactly legal, but not explicitly illegal either. Gray area stuff. What's his name? Max Byers. Lives in Savannah. I haven't talked to him in years, but Daryl pulled out his phone, scrolled through old contacts. Yeah, I still have his number. Can you trust him? With this? I don't know. Daryl looked conflicted. But if you're going to do this, better to use someone with skills than try it yourself and fuck it up. Vincent nodded slowly. Set up a meeting. Somewhere public, neutral ground. I want to talk to him face to face. And if he says no, then I'll find someone else. Vincent's expression was hard. One way or another, the Cole family is going down. The only question is how much collateral damage they take with them. After Daryl left, Vincent checked on Emma one more time. She was sleeping peacefully, the stuffed unicorn clutched in her arms. He adjusted her blanket, kissed her forehead gently, and returned to the living room where his laptop waited. He had research to do. Winston Marsh, the defense attorney, had a reputation for getting clients acquitted or reduced sentences through technical, legal maneuvering. Vincent needed to understand the man's strategies, his weaknesses, his past cases. The other 8 defendants had their own lawyers, but they were smaller fish. Marsh was the shark, and if Vincent could find a way to neutralize him, the rest would crumble. He spent hours reading case files, court transcripts, legal blogs analyzing Marsh's tactics. The attorney had a particular trick he used in abuse cases. He'd argue that the defendant had been trying to protect the child from their own behavior, that the discipline, however excessive, came from a place of love and concern. It was bullshit, but it worked. Juries wanted to believe that adults didn't hurt children out of malice, that there must have been some justification. Marsh exploited that cognitive dissonance masterfully. Vincent also researched Emma's supposed behavioral problems, the narrative Marsh was already building. He called Emma's daycare, spoke to her teacher who confirmed Emma had never been violent or aggressive. He gathered report cards, medical records, anything that showed Emma as the sweet, gentle child she was. But he also thought about the bigger picture. Even if Marsh failed, even if all 9 defendants were convicted, they'd only serve a few years, maybe 5, maybe 10 at most, and then they'd be out still relatively young, still capable of causing harm. That wasn't enough. Vincent needed permanent solutions. His phone buzzed a text from Daryl. Max says he'll meet you. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., coffee shop in Savannah. Forsyth Park Cafe. Come alone. Vincent replied with a thumbs up, then continued his research. He was looking up property records for Marsh's rental properties when another text came through, this one from an unknown number. Stop what you're doing or you'll regret it. Vincent stared at the message. Then, he checked the number. It was masked, probably a burner phone or VoIP service. He took a screenshot, saved it, and replied simply, "Who is this?" No response. But the message was clear enough. Someone in the Cole family, or someone working for them, was already trying to intimidate him. They had no idea who they were fucking with. Vincent added the message to a file. He was keeping documentation of everything related to the case. Then he pulled up the GPS tracking information the DA's office had shared with him. All 9 defendants were showing at their home addresses, ankle monitors reporting in regularly. For now, they were following the rules. But Vincent knew from experience that rules meant nothing to people without honor. The Cole family had already shown what they were capable of. It was only a matter of time before they tried something else. And when they did, Vincent would be ready. He worked through the night, dozing briefly on the couch, always listening for Emma's voice or footsteps. Around 6 a.m., she woke crying, and he was there immediately, scooping her up, holding her while she sobbed into his shoulder. "Nightmare," he murmured. "Just a nightmare, sweetheart. You're safe. Daddy's got you." Emma's small hands clutched at his shirt. She tried to say something, but the words came out garbled and painful. Vincent could see the frustration in her eyes, his articulate, curious daughter who loved to ask questions and tell stories. Now, unable to speak. "It's okay," he told her. "Your voice will come back. The doctors promised. And until then, Daddy understands you. We'll figure it out together." He carried her to the kitchen, made her favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs, mashed up soft enough for her injured mouth. She ate slowly, painfully, but she ate. That was something. As the sun rose on Christmas Day, Vincent sat with his daughter and made a silent promise. Not just to protect her, not just to get justice for her, but to make absolutely certain that the people who'd hurt her would never hurt anyone again. Whatever it took, however long it took. Vincent Kern had 3 weeks before his deployment resumed. It would be enough. Savannah was 2 hours from Augusta, a beautiful city of historic squares and Spanish moss. Vincent made the drive alone, leaving Emma with Daryl and his fiancée, Melinda Kuhn, who'd come down from Colombia for the holidays. Vincent had briefed Melinda on everything. The woman was a high school counselor, trained in trauma response, and she'd immediately bonded with Emma. The Forsyth Park Cafe was a small place with outdoor seating, crowded with tourists and locals enjoying the mild December weather. Vincent arrived early, scoped the location, identified exits and sight lines out of habit. Then he ordered coffee and waited. Max Byers arrived exactly at 2 p.m. He was tall and gangly, early 30s, with a pale complexion of someone who spent too much time indoors. He wore glasses and a flannel shirt, looked more like a college student than a cybersecurity specialist. "Vincent?" Max sat down without shaking hands. "Daryl said you needed help with something delicate." "I do." Vincent kept his voice low. "But first, I need to know if you can be trusted. This conversation doesn't leave this table." Max studied him for a moment. "I know who you are. I Googled you after Daryl called. Marine, decorated veteran, currently on emergency leave. I also know what happened to your daughter. It was on the news. Then you understand why I'm here." "I can guess." Max leaned back. "You want digital warfare. Financial attacks, reputation damage, evidence, manipulation. The kind of work that's technically illegal, but morally justified. Something like that." Max was quiet for a moment. "I've done work like this before. Corporate espionage, mostly. Exposing corruption, helping whistleblowers, that sort of thing. I don't steal money or destroy people for profit. But I do believe in justice outside the legal system when the legal system fails." He met Vincent's eyes. "Tell me what you need." Vincent told him. Not everything. He kept some details vague, but enough. The Cole family's finances. Marcia's control over the family money. The expensive lawyers draining those resources. The rental properties providing her income. "I need her financially ruined," Vincent concluded. "Bankrupt, unable to pay for her defense, unable to make bail if it gets revoked. I need her desperate and alone." Max nodded slowly. "That's doable. Her financial advisor in Atlanta, I can probably access that trust through social engineering. Fake emails, phishing attacks, the usual. Once I'm in, I can move money around, create enough confusion that it'll take her months to straighten out. By then, the criminal trial will be over." "What about the rental properties?" "That's trickier. I can't commit arson for you. That's way outside my skill set and moral comfort zone. But I can file anonymous complaints with code enforcement. Report violations, force inspections. If there are any actual violations, and there usually are in rental properties, the city will shut them down until they're fixed. That costs money and eliminates her rental income." "How much will this cost me?" $20,000. Half up front, half when it's done." Max saw Vincent's expression. "I know that's steep, but this is high-risk work. If I get caught, I'm looking at federal charges." Vincent didn't have $20,000. He had maybe 8 in savings, and most of that would go to Emma's therapy and legal costs. But he could get it. He could take out loans, max out credit cards. For Emma's safety, he'd mortgage his future. "Deal. But I need something else, too." "What?" "Information. I need to know everything about the defense attorneys, especially Winston Marsh. His finances, his communications, his strategy. Anything that gives us leverage. Max whistled softly. Attorney-client privilege is supposed to be sacred. If I hack into their communications, nothing we find can be used in court. I don't care about court. I care about knowing what they're planning. Vincent leaned forward. Can you do it? Probably. Marsh's firm has digital security, but nothing I haven't broken through before. Max pulled out a laptop. Give me until New Year's. I'll have preliminary intelligence by then. Financial disruption will take another week after that. They worked out the details: dead drops for payment, encrypted communications, how Vincent would receive the information without creating a digital trail. Max was thorough and professional, clearly experienced in this kind of work. As they were wrapping up, Max asked, "What happens after? Say I ruin Marcia Cole financially, leak her lawyer's strategy, expose whatever skeletons are in her closet. What then?" "Then the legal system does its job," Vincent said. "Without expensive lawyers manipulating the process, without unlimited resources to drag things out, they'll face real justice. And if they don't? If they still beat the charges somehow?" Vincent's expression went cold. "Then I handle it personally." Max nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Just be careful, man. You've got a daughter to raise. Don't throw your life away." "I won't." Vincent stood, left cash for the coffee. "I'll be in touch." The drive back to Augusta gave Vincent time to think. He was crossing lines, hiring someone to commit cybercrimes, planning to destroy people's finances and reputations. It was illegal, unethical by conventional standards, and if caught, he'd face serious consequences. But Vincent had spent his adult life in combat zones where conventional morality didn't apply, where you did what was necessary to protect your unit and complete your mission. This wasn't different. Emma was his unit. Her safety was the mission, and anyone who threatened that mission was the enemy. He'd eliminated plenty of enemies in Afghanistan. This time, he'd do it with lawyers and financial pressure and digital warfare instead of rifles. But the principle was the same. Vincent arrived home to find Emma coloring at the kitchen table with Melinda while Daryl cooked dinner. The scene was so normal, so peaceful, that Vincent felt his chest tighten. This was what Emma deserved: safety, normalcy, a childhood free of terror. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Vincent sat with Daryl and Melinda and told them about Max Byers. Daryl wasn't surprised. Melinda looked conflicted. "You're playing a dangerous game," she said quietly. "If this goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, Emma loses her father. She's already lost her mother. Her mother tried to hurt her." Vincent cut in. "Brittany doesn't get to be part of Emma's life anymore." "I know. I'm not defending Brittany. But Vincent, Emma needs you. And if you're in prison, I won't be." Vincent's voice was firm. "I'm being careful. Max is a professional. The work he's doing can't be traced back to me. And even if someone suspected, there's no evidence." Melinda exchanged a look with Daryl, then sighed. "Okay. I hope you're right. For Emma's sake." That night, Vincent received an email from DA Norton. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for January 8th, 13 days away. At that hearing, the judge would determine if there was enough evidence to proceed to trial. With the video evidence, it should be a slam dunk. But Vincent knew that Winston Marsh would try to get the video suppressed. He'd argue it was taken during a moment of stress, that it didn't show the full context, that Emma had been misbehaving beforehand. The defense would put together their own narrative. Vincent needed to counter that narrative, not just legally, but publicly. The court of public opinion mattered, especially in a case like this, where jury selection would be critical. He spent the next several days carefully leaking information to local journalists. Not enough to compromise the case, but enough to shape the story. Photos of Emma, before the abuse, smiling, happy, clearly not a violent child. Statements from her daycare teacher. Medical records showing no history of behavioral problems. The media ate it up. By December 28th, every local news station was running stories about the little girl tortured by her family and the Marine father fighting for justice. The Cole family, meanwhile, stayed silent on advice of their lawyers. But Vincent knew they were planning something. The threatening text message had been just the beginning, and on December 29th, his suspicions were confirmed. He was at home with Emma when his phone rang. "DA Norton. We have a problem." Norton said without preamble. Winston Marsh just filed a motion to dismiss. He's arguing that you illegally detained his clients when you locked them in the sunroom, that any evidence gathered after that point is fruit of the poisonous tree. Vincent's jaw clenched. That's bullshit. I was protecting my daughter. I know. And Judge Graves will probably deny the motion. But Marsh is smart. He's laying groundwork for an appeal if they're convicted. He's also filed motions to suppress the video evidence and to get separate trials for each defendant. Norton sighed. This is going to be a long fight, Vincent. Months, maybe more than a year before we even get to trial. That's not acceptable. It's the reality. Look, I'm doing everything I can, but Marsh is one of the best defense attorneys in the state. He's going to use every trick, every delay tactic, every technical loophole. Then find a way to shut him down. I'm trying. But I need you to be patient, and I need you to not do anything stupid. I heard about the media leaks. That was smart, building public support. But if you do anything illegal, anything that gives Marsh ammunition, it could torpedo the entire case. After hanging up, Vincent sat in silence, thinking, a year or more until trial. That meant Emma would have to testify, would have to relive her trauma in front of her abusers. It meant months of waiting, of uncertainty, of fear, unless Vincent found a way to accelerate things. His phone buzzed an encrypted message from Max Byers. Phase 1 complete. Check your email. Vincent opened his laptop, accessed the encrypted email account Max had set up. Inside was a treasure trove of information. Financial records showing Marcia Cole's trust had been accessed and funds moved to offshore accounts still under her name, but effectively frozen by banking irregularities that would take months to resolve. Code enforcement complaints had been filed on both rental properties, with inspections scheduled for the first week of January. But the real gold was the attorney-client communications Max had intercepted. Emails between Winston Marsh and his co-counsel discussing strategy. And the strategy was exactly what Vincent had feared. Marsh planned to put Emma on trial, to paint her as a disturbed child who'd been hurting other kids, who'd been lying and manipulating. To argue that Brittany and her family had been trying to protect the community from a dangerous child. The scissors incident would be framed as a last resort, a desperate measure by a loving grandmother trying to stop a child from spreading lies. It was vile, it was brilliant, and it might actually work. Vincent read through the emails 3 times, his rage growing with each pass. Then he forwarded them to DA Norton with a simple message, anonymous source. Use it. Norton would know the communications were obtained illegally. He couldn't use them in court, but he could use them to anticipate Marsh's strategy, to prepare counterarguments to be ready. Vincent also forwarded them to several journalists with a note, proof the defense plans to blame the victim. Off the record, for background only, within 24 hours, the narrative shifted. News stories began questioning the defense's ethics, speculating about their strategy, expressing outrage at the idea of putting a traumatized child on trial. Public opinion, already sympathetic to Emma, solidified into something more, anger at the Cole family and their lawyers. On New Year's Eve, Vincent received another threatening message. You're making powerful enemies. Back off or face consequences. This time, Vincent didn't just screenshot it. He called Detective Beck, reported it officially. Beck traced the number. It came from a burner phone purchased at a store in Augusta 3 days earlier. Security footage showed Todd Harden buying it. That's a violation of his bail conditions, Beck said with satisfaction. No contact with you or your family. I'm arresting him tonight. Good. Vincent felt a grim satisfaction. 1 down, 8 to go. But he wasn't done. On January 1st, he paid Max Byers the second half of his fee money he'd borrowed from Daryl and would pay back somehow. In return, Max delivered the final phase of his work. Marcia Cole's financial advisor discovered the irregularities in her trust and immediately froze all transactions pending investigation. The code enforcement inspections found numerous violations in her rental properties, faulty wiring, mold, structural issues that would cost hundreds of thousands to fix. Suddenly, Marcia had no liquid assets and mounting debts. By January 3rd, she'd stopped paying her lawyers. By January 5th, Winston Marsh had filed a motion to withdraw from the case, citing irreconcilable differences with the client regarding payment and strategy. The other 8 defendants' lawyers followed suit over the next 2 days. By the time of the preliminary hearing on January 8th, All 9 defendants were represented by public defenders who'd had less than 24 hours to prepare. The hearing was a massacre. Without Marsh's experience and legal maneuvering, without the resources to hire expert witnesses or consultants, the defense collapsed. The video evidence was shown in court. Several people in the gallery gasped. One woman actually vomited. Emma's medical records were entered. The daycare teacher testified about Emma's gentle nature. Judge Graves ordered all 9 defendants bound over for trial, set for March 15th. He also revoked bail for Todd Harden due to the threatening text and increased bail for the others to $1 million each, amounts they couldn't possibly make without Marsh's resources. All 9 were remanded to custody pending trial. Vincent watched them being led away in shackles. And for the first time since this nightmare began, he felt something like hope. The system was working. Slowly, imperfectly, but working. That night, he held Emma while she slept, thinking about what came next. The trial would still be brutal. Emma would probably have to testify, though DA Norton was trying to avoid it by using the video evidence. But even if she did testify, it would be with her abusers behind bars, unable to hurt her. And after the trial, after the convictions, Vincent would return to active duty knowing Emma was safe. He'd arranged for Daryl and Melinda to take custody. While he was deployed, they were getting married in February. Perfect timing to become Emma's guardians. Everything was falling into place. Almost too perfectly. Vincent's phone buzzed. Another message from Max. Final report attached. We're done, but be careful. These people are desperate now. Vincent opened the attachment. It was a detailed breakdown of everything Max had done, every vulnerability he'd exploited, every piece of intelligence he'd gathered. At the bottom was a note. Destroyed all records on my end. As far as anyone knows, this was just bad luck and incompetence on the Cole family's part. You're clean. Vincent deleted the message, destroyed the email account, and sat back. He was clean. The Cole family was broken. Emma was safe. But Max's warning echoed in his mind. These people are desperate now. Desperate people did desperate things. And Vincent had learned in combat that the most dangerous enemy was one with nothing left to lose. He double-checked the security system, made sure all doors and windows were locked, and settled in to watch over his daughter. The preliminary hearing was over. The trial was 2 months away. 2 months to stay vigilant. 2 months to make sure nothing went wrong. 2 months to finish what he'd started. The days following the preliminary hearing fell into a routine. Vincent spent mornings with Emma doing therapy, physical therapy for her tongue, which was healing but still painful, and psychological therapy with Dr. Shelley Lewis to process the trauma. Emma was making progress. She could speak now, though her words were slurred and she struggled with certain sounds. But she was trying, and that was what mattered. Afternoons were for trial preparation. DA Norton's team interviewed Vincent repeatedly, building their case. They walked him through every detail of discovering the abuse, his actions that day, Emma's condition. Norton was confident about the trial but cautious about Emma testifying. We have the video, Norton explained during one meeting. That's powerful evidence. But defense will argue it doesn't show what happened before. That Emma had been acting out. If we put her on the stand, they'll cross-examine her. She's young, traumatized, it could backfire. So, don't put her on the stand, Vincent said. Use the medical evidence, the video, my testimony. That should be enough. Should be. But juries are unpredictable. Norton shuffled papers. The good news is the public defenders are overwhelmed. They're handling multiple cases each. Haven't had time to build a solid defense. With Marsh gone, the Cole family lost their best weapon. Vincent nodded but said nothing. He knew exactly why Marsh was gone, why the family's finances had collapsed, and he felt no guilt about it. In the evenings, Vincent researched what came next. After the trial, assuming convictions, the defendants would be sentenced. Georgia law allowed for 5 to 20 years per count of aggravated child abuse. With 9 defendants each facing multiple counts, the sentences could be substantial. But Vincent also researched parole guidelines, early release programs, good behavior credits. Even with 20-year sentences, most would be out in 10 to 12 years. And some might get less depending on the judge. It wasn't enough, but it was what the law allowed. On January 15th, Vincent's emergency leave officially ended. He had to report back to Camp Lejeune for reassignment. But his Lieutenant Colonel Norman Sweeney, called him personally. Kern, I've reviewed your situation. Your daughter's custody arrangements, the upcoming trial. I'm extending your leave through the end of March. After the trial, we'll reassess. Sir, I appreciate that, but that's an order, Staff Sergeant. Your daughter needs you more than the Corps does right now. Besides, you've earned it. 3 tours, decorated service. Never once asked for special treatment. The Corps takes care of its own. Vincent felt unexpected emotion welling up. Thank you, sir. Just make sure those bastards get what's coming to them. I will, sir. With the extension secured, Vincent could focus entirely on Emma and the trial. Daryl and Melinda had moved temporarily to Augusta, staying in a rental near Vincent's house. They'd formally filed for guardianship, which would take effect if Vincent was deployed after the trial. Emma had bonded with them quickly, especially with Melinda, who had a gentle touch with traumatized kids. She's resilient, Melinda told Vincent one evening after putting Emma to bed. More than you'd expect. But she'll carry this with her forever. Not just the physical scars, but the psychological ones. I know. She asks about Brittany sometimes. Asks why her mommy did that to her. Melinda's voice was soft. What do you tell her? Vincent had struggled with that question. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that her mother participated in her torture? That the people who were supposed to protect her had hurt her instead? I tell her that some people make very bad choices, Vincent said finally. That her mommy made a bad choice, and now she has to face consequences. But that Emma is safe now, and nothing like that will ever happen again. Does she believe you? I don't know, but I'll keep saying it until she does. On January 20th, Vincent received a call from Detective Beck. We've got a development. Renee Knox wants to make a deal. Vincent met Beck at the police station. Renee Knox sat in an interrogation room, looking haggard and scared. She'd lost weight in custody, her orange jumpsuit hanging loose on her frame. Her public defender, a tired-looking woman named Francine Christensen, sat beside her. My client wants to cooperate, Christensen said. She'll testify against the other defendants in exchange for reduced charges. D.A. Norton, who joined the meeting, leaned forward. What can she offer? Renee spoke quietly. I can tell you everything. How it started. Why we did it. She couldn't meet Vincent's eyes. I can testify that it wasn't discipline. That Marcia was. She was angry. She'd been drinking. Emma had talked back to her earlier that day, and Marcia said the child needed to learn respect. What about Brittany? Norton asked. Brittany. Renee hesitated. Brittany filmed it because Marcia told her to. Said they needed documentation in case Emma told anyone, so they could show she was lying. Marcia's always been like that, controlling, manipulative. We all just went along with it. Vincent wanted to lunge across the table, to grab Renee and demand why she hadn't stopped it, why she'd held down his daughter while her tongue was cut. But he forced himself to stay still, to let Norton handle it. That's not much of a defense, Norton said. Going along with it doesn't excuse participation. I know, but I can testify about Marcia's history. There were other incidents. Not as bad, but she hit Brittany's kids before. Todd's kids too. We all knew she had a temper, but she's got money, and Renee's voice broke. We needed her money. She controlled everything. If you went against her, she'd cut you off. This was new information, and Norton pounced on it. Other children were abused? Not like Emma. Spanking mostly, sometimes slapping. But she'd justify it as discipline, and we never questioned her. Renee wiped her eyes. I'm not trying to excuse what I did. I held that little girl down. I helped hurt her. I deserve to go to prison. But if my testimony can help convict the others, especially Marcia, I want to do that. After several hours of negotiation, a deal was struck. Renee would plead guilty to a lesser charge, facilitation of child abuse, instead of aggravated child abuse, and receive a 10-year sentence with possibility of parole after 5. In exchange, she'd testify against the other 8 defendants and provide evidence of Marcia's past abuse. Vincent hated the deal, hated that Renee would get a reduced sentence when she'd participated in Emma's torture. But Norton convinced him it was strategic. One cooperative defendant breaks the other's solidarity, Norton explained. Renee's testimony establishes motive, that they were all under Marcia's control, that she was the ringleader. It also opens the door to bring in evidence of past bad acts, which is usually inadmissible but becomes relevant when showing pattern of behavior. And the others? The others will panic. They'll start turning on each other, trying to cut their own deals. By the time we get to trial, the Cole family will be in complete disarray. Norton was right. Within a week, 2 more defendants approached the DA with deal offers. Barry Knox, Renee's husband, offered similar testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence. Gloria Holman, Marcia's sister, claimed she'd tried to stop it, but had been threatened by Marcia. Norton rejected both deals. "We don't need them anymore," he told Vincent. "We have Renee's testimony, which is enough. Let the others face full charges." The trial was scheduled for March 15th, but on February 1st, another development emerged. Brittany's public defender filed a motion for a psychiatric evaluation, claiming Brittany had been suffering from postpartum depression and was not in her right mind during the abuse. Vincent read the motion with disgust. Emma was 5 years old, well past any postpartum period. It was a desperate ploy, and he expected Judge Graves to deny it. But Graves granted the evaluation, setting back the trial by 2 weeks to allow time for the assessment. Vincent was furious until Norton explained the strategy. "Let them have their evaluation," Norton said. "They won't find what they want. Brittany's been evaluated multiple times since arrest, no signs of serious mental illness. This just wastes their time and makes them look desperate." While waiting for the trial, Vincent focused on Emma. Her physical therapy was progressing well. She could eat normally now, though certain foods still hurt. Her speech was improving daily. Psychologically, she was still fragile, prone to nightmares and anxiety, but Shelley Lewis said that was normal. "She's processing the trauma in her own way," Shelley explained. "Children are remarkable in their ability to heal, but it takes time. The most important thing is that she feels safe, and with you she does." Vincent made sure of it. He was with Emma constantly, rarely letting her out of his sight. Daryl and Melinda helped when Vincent needed breaks, but otherwise he was there. They developed routines: breakfast together, therapy, lunch, quiet time, playtime, dinner, bedtime stories. Simple, predictable, safe. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, Emma made Vincent a card at Melinda's suggestion. It was a simple crayon drawing of 2 stick figures, one big, one small, holding hands. Inside, in Emma's careful 5-year-old handwriting, it said, "I love you, Daddy. Thank you for saving me." Vincent held that card and wept for the first time since discovering the abuse. He'd been so focused on justice, on revenge, on destroying the people who'd hurt his daughter, that he'd almost forgotten the most important thing. Emma was alive. She was healing. She was safe. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Vincent made a decision. Whatever happened at the trial, whether the defendants got maximum sentences or minimum, whether the justice system failed or succeeded, Vincent was done with revenge. He'd done enough. Broken the Cole family financially, ensured they'd lost their expensive lawyers, gathered evidence and testimony that would almost certainly lead to convictions. The rest was out of his hands, and maybe that was okay. He called Max Byers, asked for one final piece of information: had Max left any traces, anything that could come back to bite them? "Nothing," Max assured him. "I was careful. The financial irregularities look like banking errors. The code enforcement complaints were anonymous and legitimate. The email intercepts left no trace. You're clean, Vincent. Walk away. That's the plan." "Good. Your daughter's lucky to have you." After hanging up, Vincent sat on his back porch, looking at the stars, thinking about the future. After the trial, he'd return to active duty, but only for short deployments. He'd request stateside assignments, anything that kept him close to Emma. Daryl and Melinda would have legal guardianship, but Vincent would be present in Emma's life as much as possible. They'd rebuild, move past this, give Emma the childhood she deserved, even if it was starting late. The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation. DA Norton drilled Vincent on his testimony, walking him through what to expect from cross-examination. They practiced staying calm, not showing anger, focusing on facts rather than emotions. "The defense will try to provoke you," Norton warned. "They'll imply you overreacted, that you were violent, that you illegally detained their clients. Don't take the bait. Just stick to the facts." Vincent promised he would. But inside, He wondered if he could actually stay calm while defense attorneys tried to paint him as the villain and his daughter's torturers as victims. On March 1st, the psychiatric evaluation results came back. Brittany showed no signs of postpartum depression, no mental illness that would have impaired her judgment. The psychiatrist's report was damning. Subject demonstrates clear understanding of right and wrong, shows no remorse for her actions, and appears to have participated willingly in the abuse. That killed Brittany's defense. Her public defender tried to withdraw from the case, claiming conflict of interest, but Judge Graves denied the motion. The trial would proceed as scheduled on March 29th. The 2-week delay, plus additional time for more legal maneuvering, had pushed it back further. Vincent used the extra time to fortify Emma's routine, to make sure she felt as secure as possible. He also met with the victim services coordinator to discuss what would happen at trial. Emma wouldn't be in the courtroom, she was too young, and her video statement would be used instead. But Vincent would testify, and he wanted Emma to understand what that meant. The bad people who hurt you are going to have a trial, he explained one evening. That's where a judge and jury decide if they should go to jail. Daddy has to go and tell the judge what happened. But you don't have to go. You'll stay here with Uncle Daryl and Aunt Melinda, and you'll be safe. Emma nodded seriously. Will they go to jail forever? For a long time, Vincent promised. Long enough that they can't hurt you ever again. Okay. Emma hugged her stuffed unicorn. I'm glad you came home, Daddy. I'm glad you stopped them. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. The night before the trial, Vincent couldn't sleep. He lay in Emma's room on his cot, watching her sleep peacefully, and thought about everything that had led to this moment. The emergency leave, the horrific discovery, the rage and helplessness, the decision to fight back, not just through the legal system, but through every means available. He'd broken laws, hired a hacker, destroyed people's finances, intercepted attorney-client communications. By any conventional standard, he'd gone too far. But looking at Emma now, sleeping safely, healing despite everything, Vincent couldn't bring himself to regret it. The system needed help, and he provided that help in the only way he knew how. Tomorrow, the system would get its chance. The trial would determine if the law could deliver justice. And if it did, Vincent would walk away clean, conscience clear, mission accomplished. And if it didn't, well, Vincent had contingency plans. He always did. But he hoped God, how he hoped that he wouldn't need them. March 29th dawned cold and gray. Vincent, dressed in his Marine uniform, ribbons and decorations displayed. Norton had suggested it, reminding the jury that Vincent was a decorated veteran, a man who'd served his country, someone they could trust. The Richmond County Courthouse was packed. Media trucks lined the street, reporters shouting questions as Vincent walked past with Daryl. Inside, the courtroom was standing room only. The case had attracted national attention. Marine father versus torture family, the headlines called it. The 9 defendants sat at 2 defense tables, separated by their public defenders. Marcia Cole looked diminished, her expensive clothes replaced by a simple dress, her hair gray and unkempt. Brittany wouldn't meet Vincent's eyes. Todd Harden stared at the floor. The others looked scared. Judge Graves called the court to order. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are here today in the case of the state of Georgia versus Marcia Cole et al. 9 defendants face multiple counts of aggravated child abuse. The state bears the burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that each defendant committed these crimes. You will hear testimony, see evidence, and ultimately decide the defendant's fate. He looked at DA Norton. The state may present its opening statement. Norton stood, walked to the jury box. For the next 20 minutes, he laid out the state's case with devastating precision. The video evidence, still photos of Emma's injuries, medical testimony, Renee Knox's cooperation. He described the scene Vincent had discovered. The 9 adults holding down a 5-year-old girl while her grandmother cut her tongue with scissors. Several jurors looked sick. One woman was crying. Then, it was the defense's turn. The public defenders had coordinated a strategy to argue that Marcia had been the ringleader, that the others had acted under duress or coercion, that the situation had escalated beyond anyone's control. It was weak, and the jurors' expressions showed they weren't buying it. Vincent was the state's first witness. He took the stand, swore to tell the truth, and met Norton's eyes. Staff Sergeant Kern, Please tell the jury what you discovered on December 23rd. Vincent did. He kept his voice steady, sticking to the facts, describing everything from arriving home to finding Emma in the basement to securing the suspects. He didn't embellish, didn't show emotion. Just cold, clear facts. The jury was riveted. Cross-examination was brutal. Marcia's public defender, a young man named Lyle Bryant, tried to paint Vincent as violent and irrational. You grabbed my client and threw her against a wall, didn't you? I removed her from my daughter. By using physical force? Yes. You then locked 9 people in a room against their will? I secured the suspects pending police arrival. You had no legal authority to detain them. I had every authority to protect my daughter from ongoing abuse. Vincent's voice hardened slightly. If I'd been 30 seconds later, Mrs. Cole might have cut Emma's tongue off completely. I used the minimum force necessary to stop that from happening. Brian tried a few more angles but got nowhere. Vincent's testimony was rock solid. The medical examiner testified next, describing Emma's injuries in clinical detail. Then came Emma's daycare teacher, testifying about Emma's gentle nature and lack of behavioral problems. Character witnesses for Emma painted a picture of a normal, happy child. Then Norton played the video. The courtroom went silent. Vincent had to step outside. He couldn't watch it again, couldn't listen to Emma's screams. In the hallway, he paced until Daryl found him. Jury's devastated, Daryl said quietly. Half of them are crying. I saw one juror actually glare at the defendants. Good. Renee Knox testified on day 2. She was calm, remorseful, and damning. She described Marcia's history of abuse, the family's financial dependence on her, the way she controlled everyone through money and intimidation. She described the events of December 23rd in detail, how Marcia had been drinking, how she'd exploded at Emma's back talk, how she called the family together to teach the child a lesson. Did anyone try to stop her? Norton asked. No, Renee said quietly. We were all too scared of Marcia. She has a temper, and she controls our money. If you cross her, she trailed off. What about Brittany? Did she try to stop her mother? No. Brittany was laughing. She was filming it and laughing. Renee's voice broke. I know that makes me sound like I'm trying to shift blame, but it's true. Brittany thought it was funny. The defense tried to discredit Renee during cross-examination, pointing out her plea deal and reduced sentence. But her testimony was too consistent, too detailed. The jury believed her. Over the next week, the state presented the rest of its case. Financial records showing Marcia's control over the family. Text messages between the defendants discussing Emma's behavior problems, messages that read more like conspiracy than concern. Expert testimony about child abuse and torture. The defense's case was weak. They put up character witnesses for each defendant, but Norton shredded them on cross-examination. They tried to present evidence of Emma's supposed misbehavior, but had nothing concrete, just vague statements from the defendants themselves. Brittany took the stand in her own defense, a risky move. She claimed she'd been coerced by her mother, that she'd filmed the abuse to document it for police later, that she'd never actually wanted to hurt Emma. Norton destroyed her on cross-examination. You were laughing in the video, weren't you, Miss Kern? I was. That was nervous laughter. I was scared. Scared of what? Your 5-year-old daughter? No. Of my mother. Your mother who you called 12 times that day, asking when she'd be home? Your mother who you texted, can't wait to see you teach that brat a lesson. Norton held up phone records. That doesn't sound like someone acting under duress. Brittany had no answer. She left the stand in tears, but the damage was done. Closing arguments came on day 9 of the trial. Norton was brilliant, weaving together the evidence into an undeniable narrative of systematic abuse. The defense attorneys tried their best, but they had nothing to work with. Judge Graves charged the jury on day 10. They deliberated for 6 hours. The verdict came back on March 31st. Guilty. On all counts. All 9 defendants. The courtroom erupted. Several jurors were crying. Marcia Cole showed no reaction. Brittany collapsed sobbing. The others looked shell-shocked. Judge Graves gavelled for order. The defendants will be remanded to custody pending sentencing. Sentencing hearing is set for April 15th. Court is adjourned. Vincent sat in the gallery as the defendants were led away in shackles. He felt no triumph, no joy, just exhaustion and relief. It was over. Emma would never have to fear these people again. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Vincent made a brief statement, thanking the jury and the prosecution, dedicating the victory to Emma. Then he went home to his daughter. Emma was waiting with Daryl and Melinda, coloring at the kitchen table. She looked up when Vincent walked in. Did they go to jail? Yes, sweetheart. They're going to jail for a very long time. Emma nodded solemnly. Good. Can we have ice cream? Vincent laughed, the tension finally breaking. Yeah, we can have ice cream. Sentencing came on April 15th. Judge Graves was thorough and merciless. I have presided over thousands of cases in my career, he began. Murders, rapes, horrific crimes of violence. But I have never seen anything as depraved as what occurred on December 23rd. The systematic torture of a child by 9 adults, family members who were supposed to protect her, is beyond comprehension. He sentenced Marcia Cole to the maximum, 20 years with no possibility of parole. Brittany received 18 years. Todd Harden got 15. The others received between 10 and 15 years each. These sentences are not just punishment, Graves concluded. They are a statement that our society will not tolerate child abuse, that families who prey on the most vulnerable will face the harshest consequences the law allows. Renee Knox, who had already pleaded guilty, was formally sentenced to 10 years with parole eligibility after 5. It still felt light to Vincent, but he accepted it as the price of her cooperation. After the sentencing, D.A. Norton shook Vincent's hand. It's done. Justice has been served. Thank you, Vincent said sincerely. For everything. You made it easy. The evidence was overwhelming, and Norton paused. Between you and me, the Cole family's financial collapse helped. Without Winston Marsh, they never had a chance. Sometimes, justice needs a little push. Vincent said nothing, but he understood. Norton suspected Vincent had played a role in the family's financial ruin, but couldn't prove it and didn't want to. As far as Norton was concerned, the ends justified the means. Vincent could live with that. He returned to his house, where Emma, Daryl, and Melinda were preparing for a celebration dinner. Emma had been making a cake, or trying to, with Melinda's help. The kitchen was a disaster of flour and frosting. Daddy! Emma ran to him, and he scooped her up. Did the bad people get in trouble? They did, sweetheart. Big trouble. They won't ever hurt you again. Promise? I promise. That evening, as they ate dinner together, the four of them, a new family unit forming, Vincent felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not complete. Not perfect. Emma still had nightmares, still struggled with certain sounds and words. The scars, physical and psychological, would never fully heal. But they'd survived. They'd fought back. And they'd won. The next day, Vincent officially returned to active duty, but with a special assignment. Lieutenant Colonel Sweeney had arranged for him to be stationed at Fort Gordon in Augusta, where he'd train new recruits while staying close to Emma. His deployments would be minimal, his duties focused on education and mentorship rather than combat. Your experience is valuable, Sweeney told him, but your daughter needs you more. This assignment lets you serve while being a father. Make it work. Vincent intended to. Daryl and Melinda legally adopted Emma. Vincent remained her father in every way that mattered, but the formal adoption gave them authority to care for her when Vincent was on duty. They bought a house 2 blocks from Vincent's, creating a support system for Emma. Life slowly normalized. Emma started kindergarten, though with an IEP to accommodate her speech impediment. She made friends, learned to read, slowly regained her confidence. Therapy continued, and would for years, but progress was steady. Vincent's own healing took longer. He had nightmares too. Dreams of arriving 30 seconds later, of not being able to stop Marcia, of losing Emma. He attended his own therapy, working through the guilt and rage and fear that had driven him to such extreme measures. You did what you had to do, his therapist told him. Not all of it was legal, and not all of it was right. But you protected your daughter. Sometimes, that's enough. Vincent wanted to believe that. Most days, he did. On December 23rd, 1 year after the abuse, Vincent took Emma to the cemetery where they'd buried the past. Not literally, but symbolically. They planted a tree in their backyard. An oak that would grow strong and tall, just like Emma. This is our fresh start, Vincent told her. Everything that happened is in the past. We're growing now, getting stronger. Emma, now 6 and much more verbal, looked up at him seriously. I'm not scared anymore, Daddy. No? No. Because you'll always protect me. Right? Always, Vincent promised. No matter what. They watered the tree together. And Vincent reflected on the year behind them. The horror of discovering the abuse. The rage and helplessness. The decision to fight back not just through the legal system, but through every means available. The risk, the danger, the possibility of losing everything. And the victory. Not perfect, not complete, but real. 9 people were in prison, unable to hurt anyone else. Emma was safe, healing, building a new life. Justice had been served, both legally and personally. Vincent Kern had gone to war against his own family and won. Not through violence, not through rage, but through intelligence and strategy and unwavering determination to protect his daughter. He'd crossed lines, broken laws, done things he couldn't fully justify by conventional morality. But looking at Emma now, smiling and healthy and safe, Vincent couldn't bring himself to regret any of it. Some battles had to be fought, some enemies had to be defeated, and some victories, however imperfect, were worth whatever they cost. Vincent had paid that cost, and he'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because Emma was worth it. Every risk, every sacrifice, every line crossed. She was worth everything. And as they walked back into the house, hand in hand, father and daughter, survivors and victors, Vincent Kern finally allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd found their happy ending, or at least the beginning of one. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Hello, and welcome to Infidelity Tales Lab. Your support means everything to us. We'd love to know, which geographical location are you joining from today? At home? On the go? Share with us below. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Architect. Dominic Voss stood at the precipice of the Los Angeles skyline, surveying the city from his penthouse terrace. At 36, he had built Vostech into a billion-dollar security firm that specialized in protective systems for high-profile clients. His fingers traced the edge of his whiskey glass as he contemplated his latest acquisition, not a company, but an engagement ring for Valencia Reed. The son of a military strategist and a criminal psychologist, Dominic had inherited his father's tactical precision and his mother's understanding of human weakness. Growing up in Colorado, he learned that preparation meant survival when his parents' safe house was attacked by a criminal organization seeking revenge. Dominic had watched, hidden in a panic room, as his father eliminated 3 intruders with calculated efficiency. Never hesitate when someone threatens what's yours, his father had told him afterward. And never, ever forgive betrayal. Those lessons shaped him into the man who now commanded respect in boardrooms and fear in negotiations. Few people knew the depths of his resolve. His public persona was charming, generous, brilliant. But beneath lay the capacity for ruthlessness that had helped him crush 6 competitors in the last decade alone. Valencia had entered his life like a storm. Beautiful, vibrant, seemingly genuine. They met at a charity gala, where she worked as an event coordinator. Her wit matched his, and her ambition seemed to complement rather than compete with his own. After 8 months of dating, he'd proposed, drawn to her independence and sharp mind. "You're different," she'd told him on their 3rd date. "Most successful men want trophies. You want a partner." He believed her. The first mistake in a lifetime of meticulous judgment. The call from Preston Whitfield, his childhood friend and head of security, interrupted his thoughts. The background check came back on read. Preston said without preamble, "There's something you need to see." Dominic's grip tightened on the glass. "Bring it over." Now, 30 minutes later, Preston laid out 5 surveillance photos on Dominic's desk. Valencia entering a hotel. Valencia embracing a man. Valencia kissing that man passionately. "That's Riker Caldwell," Preston explained. I know exactly who he is," Dominic said, his voice deadly quiet. Riker Caldwell, the owner of Rival Edge Securities, Vostek's most aggressive competitor. The man who had tried to poach Dominic's clients through increasingly underhanded tactics over the past 3 years. She's meeting him twice a week? Minimum, Preston continued. Started 3 months ago. Phone records show calls dating back further. Dominic didn't move, didn't betray any emotion as he memorized every detail of the photos. Find me everything. Every email, every text, every call. I want to know what they're planning. Dom. Preston hesitated. The engagement party is in 2 weeks. Do you want to just confront her now? A cold smile formed on Dominic's face. No, I think I'll wait for a more appropriate moment. Preston recognized that smile. It was the same one Dominic had worn when he systematically dismantled the career of a board member who tried to orchestrate a hostile takeover. What are you going to do? Preston asked. Dominic turned to look out at the city again. I'm going to give Valencia and Riker exactly what they deserve. A moment they'll never forget. Chapter 2. The Deception. Valencia Reed stepped out of her silver BMW, her designer heels clicking against the pavement as she entered Riker Caldwell's beach house in Malibu. Her heart raced with the thrill of deception as much as with anticipation. He suspects nothing? Riker asked, pulling her into his arms the moment the door closed. Please, Valencia scoffed. Dominic Voss may be a genius with security systems, but he's blind when it comes to me. Men like him, powerful, isolated, they're desperate to believe someone actually loves them for who they are. Riker chuckled, his hands trailing down her back. And the engagement party preparations? Everything's set. 200 of the most influential people in tech and security. The perfect audience for our little announcement. She smiled, a predatory gleam in her eyes. After I publicly humiliate him and join forces with you, his clients will be scrambling to jump ship. At 34, Valencia had perfected the art of strategic relationships. Raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to make ends meet in Detroit, she learned early that beauty and intelligence could be weapons. Her mother had died when Valencia was 19, leaving her with crushing debt and a fierce determination to never be vulnerable again. You're brilliant, Riker murmured against her neck. That's why we're perfect together. Riker Caldwell, 42, had built Rival Edge through aggressive tactics and cutthroat ambition. The son of wealthy but emotionally distant parents, he'd grown up with everything except validation. He collected victories like trophies, and stealing Dominic's fiancée, along with his market share, would be his crowning achievement. What neither of them knew was that Dominic Voss had installed a security system in Valencia's car 3 months earlier, not out of suspicion, but as a birthday gift to keep her safe. Every conversation was recorded, every location tracked. Meanwhile, Valencia's assistant Naomi Park sat in her apartment, increasingly troubled by her boss's scheme. Valencia had brought Naomi into her confidence months ago, believing her loyalty was assured by a substantial bonus promise. But Naomi's conscience weighed heavily as she watched Valencia plan Dominic's public humiliation. Dominic had always treated Naomi with respect during their interactions, unlike Valencia, who frequently belittled her. One evening, after particularly cruel comments from Valencia about pathetic people like Dominic who confuse fear with respect, Naomi made a decision. She dialed Preston Whitfield's number. Mr. Whitfield? This is Naomi Park, Valencia Reed's assistant. There's something you and Mr. Voss need to know. The following day, Preston briefed Dominic on his meeting with Naomi. She provided copies of emails between Valencia and Riker dating back nearly a year. Before you even met her, Preston explained. They planned this from the beginning. Valencia approached you specifically because Riker identified you as his main competitor. Dominic's expression remained impassive, but his eyes turned glacial. Continue. Their plan is to announce their relationship at the engagement party. Valencia will humiliate you publicly, claim she never loved you, and leave with Riker. They're anticipating that the shock will damage your reputation enough that several of your clients will lose confidence and move to Rival Edge. Dominic tapped his fingers methodically on his desk, the only sign of his internal calculation. Sir, Preston added, there's something else. According to Naomi, they've also been working to access Vostich's client database. Valencia has been trying to copy files from your home office. For the first time, a flicker of genuine surprise crossed Dominic's face, quickly replaced by cold fury. His home, the one place he had allowed himself to be vulnerable. "Preston," Dominic said, his voice unervingly calm, "I believe it's time we prepare a special surprise for our engagement party." Chapter 3. The Infiltration. For the next week, Dominic continued his routine as if nothing had changed. He smiled at Valencia over dinner, discussed wedding plans, and pretended not to notice when she worked late. In public, he played the role of devoted fiancé perfectly. In private, he set his plan in motion. First, he approached Naomi Park directly. The young woman was terrified when Dominic's car pulled alongside her as she walked home. "Ms. Park," he said, rolling down the window, "please, I'd like to talk." Inside a quiet cafe, Dominic studied Valencia's assistant. She was intelligent, observant, and clearly remorseful about her involvement. "Why did you come forward?" he asked. Naomi hesitated. "Because what they're planning is cruel." And because she paused, gathering courage. "Because Valencia isn't who you think she is." "I'm beginning to realize that," Dominic replied with unexpected gentleness. "Tell me everything, Ms. Park. Leave nothing out." Naomi revealed how Valencia had systematically gathered information about Dominic's vulnerabilities, how she'd laughed with Riker about his pathetic trust in her, and how they planned to use the engagement party to destroy him personally and professionally. "They've even rehearsed it," Naomi explained. "Valencia has this whole speech prepared about how she never loved you, how it was all about your connections and position." Dominic nodded, his expression unreadable. "And you're willing to help me counter their plan?" "Yes," Naomi said firmly. "What do you need me to do?" What Dominic needed was access to Valencia's communications, to Riker's planning, to every detail of their scheme. With Naomi's help, he began methodically gathering evidence. Through Naomi, Dominic planted specialized spyware on Valencia's devices. Through his company's resources, he conducted deep surveillance on Riker Caldwell. What he discovered was more extensive than he had initially thought. Valencia and Riker had been targeting more than just his company. They had a list of his clients, complete with personalized strategies to poach each one after the public humiliation. They had documented his personal habits, his few weaknesses, even his childhood traumas, all to maximize the damage of their betrayal. Most disturbing was the discovery that Valencia had been secretly recording intimate conversations, planning to leak selected portions that would paint Dominic as unstable and ruthless. Ironically, the very qualities he kept most carefully controlled. "They're thorough," Preston observed as they reviewed the evidence in Dominic's secure office. "Yes," Dominic agreed, "but not thorough enough." He had discovered a crucial weakness in their plan. Valencia's ambition exceeded Riker's loyalty. In private emails to a friend, Valencia had outlined a secondary strategy, using Riker to destroy Dominic, then leveraging the information she'd gathered on both men to establish her own connections in the industry. "She's planning to betray him too, eventually," Dominic noted with cold amusement. "Poetic, really." As the engagement party approached, Dominic expanded his team. Besides Preston and Naomi, he brought in Lena Winters, his company's digital forensics expert, and Cameron Boyd, his most trusted attorney. Together, they crafted a response that would not merely counter Valencia and Riker's attack, but would turn it back on them with devastating precision. 2 days before the engagement party, Dominic called a final meeting with his team. "Everyone clear on their roles?" he asked. They nodded, each understanding that what they were about to do went beyond corporate maneuvering. This was personal for Dominic, and they had never seen him so coldly determined. "Valencia believes she found my weakness," Dominic told them. "She thinks it's my trust, my willingness to believe she loved me." He smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "She's about to discover my actual weakness. I don't forgive. Ever." The night before the engagement party, Valencia slipped into bed beside Dominic, kissing his cheek with well-practiced affection. "Nervous about tomorrow?" she asked, feigning sweetness. Dominic pulled her close, his embrace betraying nothing of what he knew. "Not at all." He replied truthfully. I've been looking forward to it for weeks now. In the darkness, Valencia smiled, believing it was the smile of a man blissfully unaware of his impending humiliation. She couldn't see Dominic's eyes, cold, focused, and already seeing the aftermath of the destruction he had planned for her and Riker. The stage was set. Chapter 4. The Revelation. The grand ballroom of the Archer Hotel gleamed with elegant decorations for what Los Angeles society believed was a celebration of love. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over 200 guests, technology executives, security experts, venture capitalists, and social elites. Valencia Reed moved through the crowd like a queen, resplendent in a custom-designed white gown that hugged her figure perfectly. She accepted congratulations with practiced grace, her eyes occasionally meeting Riker Caldwell's across the room. He stood with a group of investors, handsome in his tailored suit, sipping champagne and checking his watch. At precisely 9:30 p.m., Dominic Voss took the stage. The room quieted as he tapped the microphone. Thank you all for coming tonight, he began, his voice warm and engaging. Valencia and I are overwhelmed by your support. Valencia moved toward the stage, right on cue. This was the moment they had planned. Dominic would invite her up, and instead of joining him in celebration, she would deliver her devastating announcement. Before my beautiful fiancée joins me, Dominic continued, I wanted to share something special with all of you. A flicker of confusion crossed Valencia's face. This wasn't part of the expected script. Dominic smiled directly at her. Valencia has taught me so much about trust, about vulnerability, about what it means to let someone into your life completely. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Valencia froze, suddenly uncertain. In fact, Dominic continued, I have some of Valencia's own words to share with you all. He nodded to Preston, who stood by the ballroom's control panel. The lights dimmed slightly, and a massive wall screen behind Dominic illuminated. An email appeared, enlarged for all to see. From Valencia Reed to Riker Caldwell. Subject, the plan. Riker, everything is proceeding perfectly. Dominic suspects nothing. The fool actually believes I love him. I've never met someone so brilliant in business, yet so pathetically blind in his personal life. The engagement party will be our perfect opportunity. I'll wait until he calls me on stage. Then I'll announce that it was all a charade. The look on his face when I tell everyone I'm leaving him for you will be priceless. With his reputation in tatters and his confidence shattered, his clients will be looking for more stable options. Rival Edge will be perfectly positioned to step in, and you've promised me a substantial role in the new venture. Just 2 more weeks of pretending to love this man, and we'll have everything we wanted. Valencia. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Valencia stood transfixed, her face draining of color as her own words condemned her before everyone who mattered in their industry. But Dominic wasn't finished. Another email appeared on screen. From Valencia Reed to Layla Manning. Subject, the real plan. Layla, I know I've told you about using Dominic for his connections, but there's more. Once I've helped Riker destroy Vostek, I'll have enough dirt on both men to strike out on my own. Riker is just as arrogant as Dominic, just as easy to manipulate with the right combination of admiration and sex. Men are so predictable. By this time next year, I'll have leveraged their destruction into my own position of power. Why be the woman behind successful men when I can step over their corpses? Don't worry. I'll remember who my real friends are when I'm on top. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Valencia stood paralyzed, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. Riker Caldwell's face contorted with rage as he realized he too had been played. Valencia. Dominic's voice cut through the chaos, eerily calm. I believe you had something you wanted to announce. She stumbled forward, desperation in her eyes. Dominic, I can explain. You actually believed I loved you? Valencia's recorded voice boomed through the speakers, a conversation captured in her car. IT was all for your connections. The real Valencia flinched as her rehearsed speech played for all to hear. Dominic stepped closer to the microphone, his expression now hardened. I believe you're planning to announce you're leaving me for my biggest rival, He gestured toward Riker, who was already backing toward the exit, abandoning Valencia as quickly as his ambition allowed. Riker, Valencia called out, panic rising in her voice as he turned away from her. Dominic's voice remained steady. As of this moment, Valencia, you have no access to my home, my company, or my life. Your belongings have been packed and delivered to your mother's old address in Detroit. The one you claimed was a quaint family home rather than the foreclosed property it actually is. Valencia's composure shattered. You can't do this to me. I just did, Dominic replied, then addressed the shocked audience. Please, enjoy the rest of the evening. The bar will remain open, and I hope you'll stay to celebrate what this night has truly become. Not an engagement party, but a liberation. As security escorted a hysterical Valencia from the ballroom, Dominic stepped down from the stage. The crowd parted before him, faces showing a mixture of shock, amazement, and newfound respect tinged with fear. Preston approached him quietly. That went exactly as planned. No, Dominic corrected. That was just phase 1. Chapter 5, The Aftermath. In the week following the engagement party, Valencia Reed's life unraveled with terrifying speed. Her professional reputation lay in ruins. Clients canceled contracts with her event planning business. Her social media accounts flooded with messages of disgust. She called Dominic incessantly, 315 calls in 7 days. He answered none. Riker Caldwell didn't fare better. Major clients, concerned about his judgment and ethics, began quietly moving their business away from Rival Edge. Investors requested emergency meetings. His board of directors called for an internal investigation. Meanwhile, Dominic Voss maintained perfect composure in public. He gave no interviews, made no statements beyond a brief press release. My personal relationships remain personal matters, and I'm focused on continuing to provide exceptional security solutions to our valued clients. Privately, however, Dominic was executing the next phases of his plan. In his downtown office, he met with Naomi Park, who had been instrumental in exposing Valencia's scheme. Your loyalty won't be forgotten, he told her. I've arranged a position for you at Meridian Communications. The CEO owes me a favor, and they need someone with your skills and integrity. Naomi's eyes widened. Meridian was one of the top PR firms in the country. Mr. Voss, I don't know what to say. Say nothing about what happened, and we'll consider it even, Dominic replied. But remember what you witnessed. Betrayal has consequences. Later that day, Preston updated Dominic on Valencia's desperate attempts to salvage her situation. She approached 3 different networks, trying to sell her side of the story. None would touch it after seeing the emails. She's staying at a motel off Sunset. Credit cards are maxed out, and her car has been repossessed. Dominic nodded, expression unchanged. And Riker, damage control. He's claiming Valencia manipulated him, that he was a victim too. Not many are buying it, especially after the recording of him discussing how to poach her client surfaced. Dominic allowed himself a small smile. How unfortunate that anonymous tip reached the technology blogs. Preston hesitated before continuing. There's something else. Valencia has been trying to contact your sister Marissa. For the first time, genuine surprise registered on Dominic's face. His relationship with his younger sister was one of the few purely positive connections in his life. They weren't close. Marissa had chosen a quiet life as a veterinarian in Oregon, deliberately distanced from Dominic's high-stakes world, but they maintained a warm, if infrequent, relationship. Has Marissa responded? No, Preston assured him. But Valencia seems desperate to find any leverage against you. Dominic's expression darkened. Monitor the situation. If Valencia makes any move toward my sister, accelerate the timeline. Are you sure? Preston asked quietly. What we planned for Phase 3 is necessary. Dominic cut him off. Valencia and Riker didn't just try to humiliate me. They attempted to destroy everything I've built. Actions have consequences. That evening, Dominic received an unexpected visitor at his penthouse. Lena Winters, his digital forensics expert, arrived with a flash drive. You need to see this, she said without preamble. It wasn't in the original surveillance. The drive contained a video of Valencia and Riker, recorded 3 months earlier. They were discussing not just professional sabotage, but personal destruction. We need to hit him where it actually hurts, Riker was saying. His parents. That military compound attack in his childhood. It left scars. If we reference it publicly, suggest his father's actions were less heroic than reported. Valencia's laugh was cold. Perfect. Trauma is such an effective weapon. Dominic watched him passively, but a muscle twitched in his jaw, the only sign of the rage building within him. They had planned to use his parents' deaths, his most painful memory, as a tool for public humiliation. "Where did you find this?" he asked Lena. "Encrypted partition on Riker's personal server." He thought it was secure. She hesitated. "Dominic, they were going to claim your father failed to protect those in his care, that his actions led to unnecessary deaths." The lie struck at the core of Dominic's being. His father had died saving others, had sacrificed himself when the compound came under attack. Dominic stood, his decision made. "Thank you, Lena. This changes the timeline. Contact Preston and Cameron. We move to Phase 3 immediately." As Lena left, Dominic turned to the city skyline, his reflection superimposed over the lights of Los Angeles. In that moment, his expression held no trace of the public figure known for controlled charm. This was the face few ever saw, the tactician who had learned from his father that some threats must be eliminated completely. Valencia and Riker had crossed a line they didn't even know existed. They hadn't just targeted his business or his heart. They had targeted his legacy, his very identity. For that, there would be no simple public humiliation, no mere professional setback. Dominic picked up his phone and dialed Preston. "Initiate scorched earth," he said simply, and hung up. Phase 3 had begun. Chapter 6, The Counterattack. Riker Caldwell strode purposefully through Rival Edge's headquarters, projecting confidence he no longer felt. The company's stock had dropped 12% since the engagement party fiasco. Two major clients had already jumped ship, with others sending ominous signals about reviewing their security needs. His executive assistant hurried alongside him. "The board is assembled in the conference room. They're requesting immediate access to all communications between you and Valencia Reed." Riker suppressed a flash of panic. "Tell them I'll address their concerns directly and get legal on the phone." He stopped cold as he entered his office. Dominic Voss sat calmly in Riker's chair, examining a glass paperweight from the desk. "Security breach." Riker snapped at his assistant. "Call." "Security knows I'm here," Dominic interrupted, setting down the paperweight. "In fact, as of 20 minutes ago, I own controlling interest in Rival Edge Securities." Riker's face contorted. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Dominic stood slowly. "Your company's value has been in freefall. I've been quietly acquiring shares through various holdings for months, well before you and Valencia hatched your little scheme. This morning, I made an offer to your 3 largest institutional investors. They accepted with remarkable enthusiasm." Blood drained from Riker's face as he realized the trap had been set long before he even met Valencia. "Why?" he managed to ask. Dominic moved around the desk, his calm more terrifying than any display of anger. "Originally, this was simply business. Rival Edge has valuable patents, a decent client list. I planned a standard acquisition." His eyes hardened. "Then you made it personal." He picked up a remote and turned on the wall screen, displaying the video Lena had discovered. Riker and Valencia discussing using Dominic's parents against him. "That," Dominic said quietly, "was your fatal mistake." Riker backed toward the door. "Look, that was Valencia's idea. I never intended." "Sit down," Dominic commanded, his voice suddenly carrying such authority that Riker complied instinctively. "Your board is currently reviewing evidence of multiple ethics violations, client privacy breaches, and financial irregularities that my team has uncovered." "Fabricated?" "No." "Selectively compiled?" "Perhaps." Dominic smiled coldly. "You'll be voted out by noon." "You can't destroy me like this," Riker protested weakly. "I'm not destroying you, Riker. I'm absorbing you. Rival Edge will become a subsidiary of Vostech, handling our less prestigious clients. You, however, will receive a generous severance package, contingent upon your immediate resignation and a comprehensive non-compete agreement. Dominic placed a document before Riker. Signed, and you walk away wealthy but irrelevant. Refuse, and I release everything we've found to the SEC, the press, and your clients. Riker stared at the document, realizing he had severely underestimated Dominic Voss. You planned this all along. You knew about Valencia and me before the engagement party. Of course I did, Dominic replied. I knew the day after your first meeting with her. Did you really think I wouldn't protect what's mine? Across town, Valencia Reed faced her own reckoning. Evicted from her motel when her credit card was declined, she had resorted to calling old friends for help. None returned her calls. As she sat in a coffee shop, nursing a single cup to maintain access to Wi-Fi, her phone displayed a news alert. Rival Edge Securities acquired by Voss Tech. CEO Caldwell resigns. Valencia's hands trembled. Riker had abandoned her, and now Dominic had destroyed him too. She was truly alone. Her phone rang, an unknown number. She answered desperately. Valencia Reed. A woman's professional voice responded. This is Cameron Boyd, legal counsel for Dominic Voss. Valencia's heart raced. Is he willing to talk to me? Please, I need to explain. Mr. Voss has no interest in further communication with you. Cameron cut her off. I'm calling to inform you that we've documented your attempts to contact his sister Marissa. Any further communication with Mr. Voss or his family will result in immediate legal action. I just need 5 minutes with him, Valencia pleaded. What does he want from me? Money? A public apology? Mr. Voss wants nothing from you, Cameron replied coldly. That's precisely the point. You no longer exist to him. After the call ended, Valencia sat frozen, the full impact of Dominic's revenge becoming clear. He hadn't just humiliated her publicly. He had systematically erased her from the life she had built. No career, no connections, no resources. Meanwhile, Dominic met with his core team to finalize the Rival Edge acquisition. Rival Edge clients have been notified of the management change, Cameron reported. Most are staying, at least for now. And our special project? Dominic inquired. Preston nodded. The trust is established. Anonymous, untraceable to you. Dominic smiled slightly. Good. Transfer the funds. Later that evening, Valencia received another call, this time from a law firm she didn't recognize. Ms. Reed, I'm calling regarding the estate of Eleanor Reed, the attorney stated formally. Valencia's breath caught. Her mother had died with nothing but debts. There's been a development, the attorney continued. An anonymous trust has paid off all outstanding debts on your mother's property and established a maintenance fund. The house has been transferred to your name. I don't understand, Valencia whispered. Who would do this? The benefactor wishes to remain anonymous. All I can tell you is that the trust is called Consequences. As Valencia processed this information, another email arrived on her phone. It contained a one-way ticket to Detroit, scheduled for the following morning. Across the city, Dominic Voss sat alone in his penthouse, a glass of whiskey in hand. Preston had questioned the decision to provide Valencia with her mother's house. Why give her anything, he had asked. After what she planned, Dominic's answer was simple. Because now she'll know, every single day, that even her shelter comes from my mercy. That everything she has exists because I allow it. He had taken a sip of his drink. That's not kindness, Preston. It's ownership. As night fell over Los Angeles, the three players in this drama faced very different futures. Riker Caldwell, once a fierce competitor, now faced professional exile with a golden parachute that would never compensate for his lost reputation. Valencia Reed, once poised to humiliate a billionaire, now survived on his calculated charity. And Dominic Voss, seemingly the victim in their scheme, emerged more powerful than before. His company expanded, his reputation enhanced by his composed handling of betrayal. But Dominic wasn't finished. Not yet. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. 3 months after the engagement party, Valencia Reed lived a quiet existence in her childhood home in Detroit. The house had been immaculately restored, another reminder of Dominic's meticulous attention to detail. She had found work at a local event planning company, her talents still valuable even if her reputation was tarnished. Each night, she returned to the house that represented both shelter and prison. Every comfort she enjoyed came from the man she had tried to destroy. The psychological weight of this knowledge proved heavier than any direct punishment could have been. On a cold November evening, Valencia arrived home to find a sleek black car parked outside. Her heart stuttered when Preston Whitfield emerged. "Ms. Reed," he greeted her formally. "Mr. Voss requests a meeting." "He's here?" she asked, scanning the street nervously. "No, but he's prepared to speak with you if you're willing." Hope flared in Valencia's chest. Perhaps Dominic had finally relented, was ready to hear her explanation, her apology. Preston led her to the car, where a secure tablet had been set up. When activated, Dominic's face appeared on screen, as composed and unreadable as ever. "Valencia," he acknowledged simply. She leaned forward eagerly. "Dominic, thank you for—" "This isn't reconciliation," he interrupted. "This is notification." Her expression faltered. "I don't understand." "You've been attempting to contact Riker Caldwell," Dominic stated, despite the non-communication clause in his severance agreement. Valencia paled. She had indeed reached out to Riker, seeking an ally in her isolation. "How did you—" "I know everything you do," Dominic said matter-of-factly. "Every call, every email, every desperate attempt to rebuild what you destroyed." He leaned closer to the camera. "I want you to understand something, Valencia. Your current situation isn't punishment. It's containment." "What does that mean?" she whispered. "It means that as long as you live quietly in Detroit, work your modest job, and never attempt to re-enter my world, you continue to exist in this managed state." His voice remained eerily calm. "But should you attempt to contact anyone from my past or present, should you try to reconstruct any influence in the security or technology sectors, the containment ends." Valencia felt cold fear spread through her. "And then you'll discover what actual punishment looks like." For the first time, emotion flickered in his eyes, a cold, controlled fury that made her shrink back. "What you're experiencing now is mercy, Valencia. Don't mistake it for weakness." The screen went black, leaving Valencia shaking in the back seat of the car. Preston escorted her back to her front door. "One more thing," he said, handing her an envelope. "All records of your actions have been compiled here. Emails, texts, recordings. Copies have been placed in secure locations, to be released if you violate the terms Mr. Voss outlined." "He really hates me that much?" Valencia asked, her voice small. Preston studied her with something like pity. "Mr. Voss doesn't hate you, Ms. Reed. That would require emotional investment. You're simply a potential threat that's been neutralized." Across the country, Dominic ended the video call and turned to Cameron Boyd, who had observed the exchange. "She'll comply," Dominic said with certainty. Cameron nodded. "And Riker? He's been making inquiries about rebuilding in Europe." "Let him try," Dominic replied dismissively. "The non-compete is international. Besides, I've acquired controlling interest in the venture capital firm he's approaching." "Thorough as always," Cameron commented. "Though I have to ask, why not simply destroy them completely? You certainly have the means." Dominic swirled the whiskey in his glass. "Because this way, they live with the consequences. Every day, they wake up knowing they're only functioning because I permit it. That's far more satisfying than any quick destruction." Later that evening, Dominic received a call from his sister Marissa, their monthly check-in. He maintained these calls faithfully, one of the few personal rituals he allowed himself. "The clinic is doing well," Marissa told him, "though I'm still working too many hours." "You should hire more help," Dominic suggested, his tone softening as it always did with her. "Not everyone has your resources, big brother," she laughed. After a pause, she added, "I heard about what happened with your engagement. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," he assured her. "It was handled." Something in his voice made Marissa hesitate. "Dom, you didn't do anything extreme, did you?" "Nothing they didn't deserve," he replied simply. Marissa sighed. "You know, normal people just get drunk and badmouth their exes to friends." "I've never aspired to normality," Dominic said with rare humor. After ending the call, Dominic stood at his window overlooking the city. The engagement party debacle had paradoxically enhanced his reputation. Where clients had once seen a brilliant but perhaps conventional CEO, they now recognized someone who could not be crossed without consequences. Business had actually improved. He had contained the threats, expanded his empire, and emerged stronger. By any objective measure, his revenge was complete. Yet something remained unfinished. Chapter 8: The Reckoning. 6 months after the confrontation in Detroit, Riker Caldwell found himself in Vienna, attempting to rebuild his career far from Dominic Voss's sphere of influence. Despite the non-compete agreement restricting his work and security, he had secured a consulting position with a European investment firm specializing in technology acquisitions. His new life was comfortable, if not the luxury he had once known. His apartment overlooked the Danube, his reputation here untarnished by the scandal in America. He had even begun dating again, a gallery owner named Sophie who knew nothing of his past humiliation. Returning home after dinner with potential clients, Riker froze at his apartment door. It stood slightly ajar, light spilling from within. He considered calling building security, then steeled himself and pushed the door open. Dominic Voss sat in Riker's living room, examining a glass of Austrian whiskey. "Your taste has improved," Dominic commented mildly, gesturing with the glass. "Though your security awareness clearly hasn't." Riker's shock quickly turned to anger. "How did you get in here? What do you want now? You've taken everything already." "Not quite everything," Dominic replied, setting down the glass and standing. "You violated our agreement, Riker." "That's absurd," Riker scoffed. "I haven't worked in security since I left the States." "The agreement wasn't just about competing professionally," Dominic reminded him. "It also specified no contact with Valencia Reed, no discussion of our history with anyone, and most importantly, no attempts to access Vostech or former Rival Edge systems." He produced a tablet displaying logs of access attempts originating from Vienna. "Care to explain?" Riker's face drained of color. "That wasn't me. It must have been Thomas Weiss," Dominic finished for him. "Your new research assistant, who happens to be an exceptional hacker. Currently being interviewed by Interpol, by the way." Riker sank into a chair. "What do you want, Dominic? More money? Another pound of flesh?" "I want you to understand something," Dominic said, his voice deceptively conversational. "When Valencia betrayed me, it was painful but ultimately insignificant. She was a diversion, a temporary companion. But you attempted to use my parents' memory as a weapon." For the first time, Riker saw raw emotion in Dominic's eyes. "My father died protecting others," Dominic continued, each word precise and controlled. "My mother spent her life helping people understand the darkness in human psychology. They were exceptional people who died terrible deaths. And you planned to dishonor them for a corporate advantage." Riker swallowed hard. It was just business strategy, psychological warfare. "It was the last mistake you'll ever make in business," Dominic cut him off. "Your new position? The firm is a Vostech subsidiary. Your girlfriend, Sophie? On my payroll from the beginning. This apartment? Leased by one of my European holdings." He leaned closer. "You have existed for the past 6 months because I allowed it, because I wanted to see what you would do when you thought yourself free." Dominic placed a document on the coffee table. "New terms. You will transfer all remaining assets to the listed account. You will then relocate to the property in northern Finland detailed here. A position has been arranged at a local technology repair shop. You will accept this position and remain there for a minimum of 5 years." "You can't be serious," Riker whispered. "Finland? A repair shop? That's exile." "That's mercy," Dominic corrected. "The alternative involves the evidence of corporate espionage we've compiled, which carries significant prison time in both the U.S. and EU." Riker stared at the document, then at the man who had systematically dismantled his life. "You're a monster, Voss." Dominic smiled coldly. "No, I'm a strategist, and you chose the wrong opponent." He stood to leave. "You have 24 hours to sign and begin compliance. Preston will remain in Vienna to oversee the transition." As Dominic reached the door, Riker called after him, desperation in his voice. "Will it ever be enough? Will you ever be satisfied?" Dominic paused. "You targeted my parents' memory, Riker. The answer is no." Meanwhile, In Detroit, Valencia Reed received a package. Inside was a flash drive and a note in Dominic's handwriting, "For your awareness." The drive contained videos, Dominic's meeting with Riker in Vienna, footage of Riker's new girlfriend reporting to Preston, documentation of how thoroughly Dominic had controlled Riker's escape to Europe. The message was clear. There was no escape from Dominic Voss's reach. No matter how far they ran, how carefully they rebuilt, he was watching, controlling, orchestrating. That night, Valencia finally understood the true extent of Dominic's revenge. It wasn't just the public humiliation or the professional destruction. It wasn't even the ongoing surveillance and control. It was the psychological prison he had constructed, one where they could never feel secure, never trust their surroundings, never be certain who might be reporting back to him. As she looked around the house he had given her, the house that symbolized both her shelter and her captivity, Valencia realized that Dominic's revenge would never truly end. She would live the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, wondering if each new acquaintance was his agent, each opportunity his trap. Back in Los Angeles, Dominic reviewed the tracking data, showing Valencia had viewed the files. Another piece in place, another reminder delivered. Preston voiced what others on the team had begun wondering. How long do you plan to maintain surveillance on them? Dominic's answer was simple. Indefinitely. Is that really necessary? Preston pressed gently. They're neutralized. Contained. It's not about necessity, Dominic replied. It's about principle. They didn't just try to betray me. They tried to use my parents against me, to desecrate their memory. His expression hardened. For that, there is no statute of limitations. Chapter 9. The Legacy. 5 years passed. Dominic Voss had expanded Vostech into a global security conglomerate. His reputation as a brilliant but merciless businessman had grown to near mythic proportions. Competitors tread carefully. Partners honored agreements to the letter. No one dared cross him. The engagement party incident had become industry legend, a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms and business schools. Few knew the full extent of what followed, how thoroughly Dominic had orchestrated the ongoing consequences for those who had betrayed him. On a crisp autumn morning, Dominic visited his parents' graves at a private cemetery outside Los Angeles. It was the anniversary of their deaths. The one day each year he allowed himself to publicly acknowledge any personal vulnerability. As he placed flowers on the graves, he sensed someone approaching. His hand moved instinctively toward the concealed weapon he always carried. Still vigilant as ever, came a familiar voice. Dominic turned to see his sister Marissa, who had flown in from Oregon for the anniversary. They embraced briefly. "I wasn't sure you'd come this year," he said. "With the new clinic opening." "Some things take priority," she replied, placing her own flowers beside his. After a moment of silence, she added, "I heard about Valencia Reed." Dominic's expression revealed nothing. "What about her?" "She's trying to rebuild her life. Started a small event planning business in Detroit. Doing community work." Marissa studied her brother carefully. "Are you still watching her?" "Of course," Dominic replied matter-of-factly. "And Riker Caldwell? Still in Finland. Still exactly where he should be." Marissa sighed. "Dom, it's been 5 years. Don't you think it's time to let go? Move on?" Dominic turned to look at their parents' headstones. "They targeted our parents' memory. Marissa used their deaths as a tool." His voice hardened. "Some things are unforgivable. Mom was a psychologist," Marissa reminded him gently. "She'd say holding on to this is hurting you more than them." "Perhaps," Dominic acknowledged. "But it's my choice to make." As they walked back to their cars, Marissa made one last attempt. "You know, there's a difference between justice and vengeance. One heals, one perpetuates." Dominic smiled slightly. "I never claimed to be interested in healing, sister." Later that day, in his penthouse office, Dominic reviewed the latest surveillance reports. Valencia had indeed started a small business, was volunteering at a community center, had begun dating a local restaurant owner. Riker had settled into his circumscribed life in Finland, all fight apparently gone. Preston entered with a quarterly security briefing. After discussing business matters, he hesitated before asking, "Have you considered what Marissa suggested about scaling back the monitoring?" Dominic looked up, surprised. You've been talking to my sister? She called me. Preston admitted. She's worried about you, Dominic. Thinks you're stuck. Interesting choice of word, Dominic mused. Do I seem stuck to you, Preston? Vostek has tripled in value. We've expanded into 17 new countries. Professionally, you're more successful than ever, Preston agreed. But personally, when was the last time you allowed anyone close to you? Dominic waved dismissively. I have no interest in repeating past mistakes. Not everyone is Valencia Reed, Preston pointed out. And constantly monitoring people who betrayed you years ago, it keeps you tethered to that moment. Dominic was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Los Angeles. You know what my father told me after the compound attack? He said, Dominic, never forget who caused you pain. Memory is power. With respect, Preston replied carefully, your father was a military man who lived in constant danger. You've already won. Valencia and Riker have been thoroughly defeated. Have they? Dominic turned back. Or have they simply adapted to their circumstances? If I ceased monitoring them tomorrow, how long before they attempted to rebuild their lives on their own terms? Before they convinced themselves they had paid enough for their betrayal? Preston recognized the immovable resolve in his friend's expression. So the surveillance continues indefinitely. Not indefinitely, Dominic corrected, until I decide otherwise. He returned to his desk. Now, about those expansion plans for Asia. That night, alone in his penthouse, Dominic reviewed footage of Valencia's new life. She appeared to be genuinely rebuilding, finding purpose in simpler circumstances than she had once craved. For a brief moment, something like doubt flickered across his mind. Was Marissa right? Was he the one trapped in the past? He closed the surveillance feed and poured himself a whiskey. On his desk sat a framed photo of his parents, the only personal item visible in his meticulously designed space.